Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. We have some CF Colorado OGs in the house today. Have we known each other for over 10 years?
Yeah.
Okay. They worked out this morning and I got Botox. So this is crazy. That's a real story, by the way. That was my workout.
You still got a glow.
The numbing hasn't worn off yet. We keep it 100 on this. I actually did the whole cast on Botox. But today we're getting into the heart space and what's really real. We've got Courtney and Brandon Miracle, which no mistake on the last name.
No, you nailed it.
I mean, yeah.
Nailed it. Like, hats off to you. It's a good thing we had known each other.
Right? I know, like, it's going to be embarrassing. This is feedback. But we got them. I've known them forever through CrossFit. Business owners, life leaders, coaches, parents. They love dogs. They're definitely part of the tribe. So I'm going to let them jump in, talk about their background, and then we'll talk about their business and all this cool stuff that they have coming on. They're genuinely influencers, IRL, in real life, for all my over 30s. And that's that. Why don't you guys hit us with the background?
Lead us off.
Oh, I'm gonna go.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. So we joke all the time about which one of us likes to talk more. So here's
your poor kids.
Right? They talk just as much.
I was gonna say, I believe that.
So we met 10 plus years ago.
Did you guys meet through CrossFit?
Well, he was a personal trainer, and I was working out at the gym that he at.
So he creeped on you while you were working out?
No, I did actually.
Oh yes, my girl. Okay.
So yeah,
he was being polite right there.
I like suckered him into like having a drink, and that was kind of it. Then we were like, oh, we should have a business. We've known each other for 4 months. When we opened Surge.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, when did you guys get into CrossFit?
I got introduced to CrossFit in 2007.
Okay, I think I was 8. Yeah. 8. Yeah. Oh shit. Okay.
And so I was not. So we met in September. Well, the end of September 2009. We started construction on the gym in March of 2010.
Okay. Oh my god, I didn't realize Surge has been around that long.
Yeah, we're almost 10 years.
Yeah. And you're like one of the, not last that are around, but
original owners.
Okay. Dang.
So we're like, this would be a great idea. We should just open a business. We don't know each other, and here we are. So
I'm glad it worked out. Not many gyms or relationships can say either one. So.
Like the first probably 6 months, we didn't tell any of the members how long we actually been together. Because we were afraid that they're like, we're not going to join this gym. It's going to go under. It's going to break up. This is going to go up in flames. So like our first founding members had no idea how long we've been together.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one that knew because she was one of Brandon's clients. So like, I always joke. She's like, I've known your husband longer than you have. But
I mean, I think when you know, and you're in good space, and if the right thing's coming at you, Brandon, look alive.
Right.
Like, don't mess this one up.
Well, her thing was always, like what she brought about is like, you run your race, and then every now and then look around and see who's running next to you, right? And like that's where you find with the relationship. So, that turned out obviously.
The best bet. Let me open this door. My dog Cleonce, she can fully come through the door. We see. I just opened it a half an inch.
Okay. So we opened the gym, kind of just on passion and really had no idea what we were doing. I mean, we did, but it was all about helping people. So he had done the very first sectionals in 2000.
That's right, it was section. I got a pass out of that.
Yeah.
You guys went straight to regionals.
But I mean, it was so raw.
Yeah. So he had done that, but he had never worked with a coach, wasn't going to a gym, and had a guy that came over and like coached him on his snatch. And it was like, this is community and this is what the world is missing, and that's what we wanted. And that's really what has come out of our life with CrossFit is community and connection, and like that's been the growth. And the gym is amazing, but there's been so much change over the last 10 years.
Well, CrossFit in general has changed.
CrossFit,
sectionals obviously, So,
when you do grow up over 10 years, well, you guys did.
Pause a little bit, right? As long as you say kid at heart.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting Botox, but the inside is exactly the same material.
Change is inevitable. As long as you keep the core right, you're good.
Yeah.
True.
So, and I guess in the last 3 years, a lot has changed. So, the gym was kind of doing its thing, and it was just, we were CrossFit and we loved it, and it was all word of mouth. And then our building got sold 3 years ago.
Oh,
we had like the good guy handshake 2010 like rates, got sold to a company that came in and said, oh, we're going to triple your rent. And
did they want you guys out? Like, was
well,
it
I mean,
I
like,
think so.
Because the landlord we had, luckily when we opened up, like literally we had nothing. Like we
Right.
like
most CrossFitters, people put like on their credit card,
yeah,
whatever
like,
weights they can.
luckily,
Yeah.
like, it was, thank God to my parents, like my mom, you know, friend us up some money. We, you know, had one rower, like 6 medicine balls, and like
yeah.
400 pounds worth of weights for like group training classes.
Yes.
And then, you know, my dad, he spent every day while I was still working over it. It was at the time was Mountainside Fitness, and like I'd work my mornings over there with clients, and I'd come over and help him in the middle of the day, and then we'd work back and forth for like a month until we got the place like operational.
Yeah.
And then like. Now we can say like we were operating like illegally there for a while because we couldn't like get the pass.
Like every true
like,
entrepreneur, yes.
Because we couldn't get the pass from the city because they're like, wait, what are you doing? Like nobody works out of a warehouse building. Like, what are you doing? Like nobody does that. And so
we like house hopped. We like lived in
yeah, so like we lived with my parents.
Yes.
Like we lived in a foreclosed house for 6 months.
Oh my
like,
god, I love. I mean, with this, dude, this deep's like the deep blood and like why you like you bleed this.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, like we lived. I mean, we didn't have TV. We went like we took a weekly trip to Blockbuster when Blockbuster was around.
So
like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
to get like the $5 movies so we could have something to watch every single week. Like, you know, yeah. So I mean, it's been a process going through that, but
Yes.
I mean, it's. I mean, but everything's there. Everything's there to teach us, right?
Yeah.
Like everything's there for us to grow from and to help us along our journey.
Yeah.
So.
And you want to do that while you're young. Because when you're young, like, yeah, I'll sleep on the floor,
Oh,
like
yeah.
popcorn.
Yeah, because I mean, like
what else?
26. I mean, I'm not,
I wasn't that
yeah,
old, so I'm 7 years older than him.
Oh,
so.
my, yes! And what if she, like, cooped you out at the gym? She's like, that young buck over there, done.
Yeah, exactly.
Courtney, I heard you
It is so funny because he's like, everyone thinks I'm younger, and they're like, he's like, that's bullshit. I'm like, sorry.
Well, dude, at the gym, you can never tell. In CrossFit, you never guess ages. You never, I mean, because you don't know. Everybody looks young and fit, and their energy is, like, youthful, so.
Yeah, and I think because we have little kids, people think we're younger. Like,
Okay,
because
well,
we have little
that.
kids, right? But anyways, the building got sold. Had to learn a whole bunch about marketing.
Okay.
You know, ended up kind of going with a company to help us. We did the 6-week challenge thing. And that was probably the turning point of us being like, there's more to this than diet and exercise.
Okay.
Because we saw so many people come in and get amazing results, and you would think they feel better, they would keep doing the thing, and then they wouldn't. And we're like, we're failing them because I don't care about, like, we don't care about weight loss. That wasn't our goal, but we thought you get them in and you help them and you show them that they're going to change, and it wasn't working. And
well, because I mean, where we were at that current time, like when we first came across CrossFit and everything, it was like, I mean, my background is sports performance, like the assistant coach at the University of Colorado as an assistant strength coach up there, and so that was the route that I thought I was going to take until I got introduced to this line of the industry. And then, you know, when we first opened the doors, it was that message of spreading community, spreading love, spreading these things that whether, you know, you're aspiring to be a professional athlete or where you're aspiring to be mom and dad getting up off the couch, right? Like, it's aspiring to be a better human being and be able to run, jump, play, you know, deadlift your body weight, do all those kind of things that is based around performance. And then, you know, when we were able to do that, we were not having to worry about the overhead, having to worry about that kind of stuff. Like, it was word of mouth. Like, it was very, it was a flourishing business, but it was very organic. And, you know, we went through our own things over the years. You know, like I had, you know, my own identity crises in the midst of it, of being worthy as an athlete, being worthy of whether or not I'll be taken, you know, honest as a coach if I wasn't a potential games athlete and all those kind of things, and that I think really impacted.
Dude, and that in itself is so funny because every gym, I don't want to cut your flow off as I was doing the cast, but when the best athlete in the gym is the owner and their workouts and everything goes around what they're training for, like as a business consultant, it's the worst thing you can do.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you remember is they don't want to go to the games, but when you get into CrossFit to be a competitor versus weight loss, you're almost like shifting. Your mindset's completely different than your clientele, and I see that all the time, and I totally get it because I came in an athlete, so that was my entrance space as well. And then, you know, being leaner or fit or whatever was kind of like the byproduct. But it's interesting to shift that mindset. So here you are thinking it's like the wrong thing, but really that's the most right thing you could do for your clientele to relate on, you know, the masses levels versus the competitor.
Well, because I mean, I remember having conversations with athletes that were around that, and they're like, you know, like, yeah, the programming, everything was awesome, like we were getting amazing results, but like, we dive into like, we had a little confrontation on our own relationship side of things that were going on. But, you know, we'd have athletes like, it was awesome, like, that was getting amazing results. But when you come into the gym, like, there was so much tension in the room. Like, I want to work out at a different time, even though, like, we were basically coaching every single class along with that, right?
The energy was just bad. It was negative. It was like,
because it was just getting so competitive.
Yeah, for him.
Well, because when I did sectionals, like, it was such a new thing. Like, you know, as being a collegiate football player, like, I lost my identity once I decided to stop doing that, and like that created this whole new thing. And then once I got introduced to CrossFit, it was like, sweet, I have a platform to still feel like an athlete, right? And so as I got more into that, like when I did sectionals, like I got like, I think it was like 120 dudes.
But that's when you get hooked, because you look around and you're like, okay.
Yeah, and I think I got like 70 something out of like 120. Like, it wasn't anywhere near competitive at all. But you got that first one, like, okay, this is something different. Like, I want to be able to, I know I have more in me, right? Like, it was coming from a place of love initially. Like, you know what, I know I have more in me. I want to see where I can take this, right? And at that time, like, there was, you know, .com, or there was, you know, Front Range, or like the Verve was kind of around like there. So you could kind of look around and see some people's blogs of like what training may look like from a CrossFit perspective. But for the most part, it was still organic of like, you know, because my background was very traditional, you know, linear progressions, all that kind of stuff when it came to strength and conditioning. But I still was learning so much, like trying new things, that it was cool to see how that could progress. But then obviously as social media started coming back around,
there wasn't even Instagram back then. I think there was Facebook-ish, but like nothing.
It really wasn't. Like, you had no idea what was going on, right? Like, you did your training, and then you showed up, and then, you know, you saw whether or not your training actually paid off for that year, and you went on, right? And so after doing that, like, I got to see some experience, right? Like, I made it to through the Open, qualified regional. I did that, you know, 4 times, but all of a sudden the expectation around that changed, right? Like, at first it was coming from a place of love, of like, this is awesome, I'm seeing things that I never thought were possible. And then all of a sudden the expectation and the identity that I attached to that of like, oh no, now you're Brandon, the regional level CrossFitter, right? Like, you're right on the brink from potentially making it to the games. You're right, and then from the outside, it was like, man, you know, you got a flourishing gym, you got an amazing wife, you got a baby on the way, you got all these things happening. Like, you must be over the moon, like ecstatic, right? And it's like, yeah, I got, you know, great fitness, I got all these things, but inside my world was crumbling. Right, like,
because you want to go to identify strongly.
Well, look, I wanted to make it to the games, but my identity was so wrapped up in, on a day-to-day basis, whether or not a workout would go well, whether or not my nutrition was dialed in, whether or not I would sleep.
That is the life of the competitor, though. Yeah. Like, you eat, I mean, every little thing, if it's off, and then to maintain, like, some of these, like, external situations, like, can I go to pizza? Can I stay out past that if you want to see a movie? I mean, it's all consuming. And
it's crazy. So close for so many years, right? Because it was 8th, like 3 years in a row when it was top 5. So I mean, it was like, there was always like the first workout every time, or the muscle up workout every single time. Like, that's what would get him, and then he would like win some, and it was like it was so close. And then he was doing somebody's programming where he could see everybody else's stuff. Okay. So every day it was like, I'm not as good as that guy. I'm not as good as that. Like, so then it was just.
That'll do. I mean, after like I was done competing, I was so mentally tapped from, and nutrition, I was never crazy about it, hence 200 kilo, but there was a couple years where I got super dialed in, and then I just got so worn out from not having outside life, not really missing, and I have no regrets whatsoever, but like being so imbalanced, but knowing like that's what it takes, like that's how you live. And then if you do go to the games, you do compete, like, I mean, I only made it on I was, I think, top 4, but so on the team, and I'm so thankful for that as well, because I'm very much more a team animal than an individual. But you kind of get in it, and you get, you know, literally in it, and you're like, this is fabulous, but worth all of this, like, years out of my life, like.
Well, it's that sense of like, it's never the things that you get that makes you happy, right? It's the who you become along the way, right? And it's like, because I did that. I mean, like, especially back then, it was zone, and then it was paleo, and then it was paleo zone, and like, I monitored
it's a Brander's dream marketing. We're here for everything.
Like, I mean, I monitored like everything, like measured it out to the T, did ever like, and I mean, and saw amazing results. But like, there was times of like, well, you know, and yet again, I wasn't, it had no regrets or anything like that. But it came down to the point of like, well, if I have a cookie, I'm worthless. I'm not as dedicated as what I'm telling myself, right? Like, God forbid I go out and have, you know, a drink with a friend, or, you know, we go out for our anniversary or whatever, and I have a single beer, right? And then all of a sudden it was that constant just beating up process, like, well, I did that yesterday, now I gotta go punish myself tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? And like, that's what we saw starting to get
It's
really,
such a slippery, fast slip. Because everyone around you is doing that too. So you're validated in like this emotional head spin.
well, and I mean, obviously it's the same thing we do is you model, you know, people that you aspire and you know, aspire to want to be like, right? Like, well, if they're doing that, that must be the lifestyle that I have to live, right? And it's like, well, is that true?
Well, and then I think it was the idea too of like, if you did everything right and you didn't make it, you could be like, well, I have no regrets.
Right.
Versus like, well, I had that one beer. That's probably why I didn't make it, right? And so it was almost this perfectionism game that just led to no joy. I mean, so he went from like enjoying it to despising it, and like the open was just hell. I mean,
I don't know anyone that likes the open. Even if you're like you're golden and you're good at everything, and like no, I mean the videotaping and the subjective everything. I don't know. I think it's. I don't know. I don't have a better way, but it's brutal, man, and it drags out.
Yeah, like I know that's the system they have to have because you're doing it on a worldwide platform with hundreds of thousands of people. But I mean, as a coach, I don't look forward to it because all of a sudden people's expectations get unrealistic to what they've been doing for 365 days, right?
Like you're not going to the games. I love you, but
yeah, it's like, oh, you know, the Open's next week. I know there's going to be a muscle up in it. Like, I'm going to go throw myself on the rings. It's like, you can't hold your, like, your shoulder's not stable enough to hold yourself at the top of the dip. Like, let's go, like, not a good idea, right? But, you know, but that's also the beauty part of it, right? Like, it gets people to try to aspire to doing things that they never thought they were capable of.
Totally.
But at the same time, I know for myself, like, I got so wrapped up in a negative place that it affected so much. It created more turmoil because really at the end of the day, like, our accomplishment should also expand and help others around you, right? Like we should really help. Our lives should I mean, in my view, should help touch other people and help bring people to a higher level. I think
you basically act in service. Like, so long as you're acting in service. And I think it's really important, though, you know, as trainers, coaches, competitors, to have, like, go through that almost, like, selfish experience, which is critical because you learn so much about yourself. You learn, like, what you do want, what you don't want. You learn how passionate you can get about something and, like, how much energy you can now have for relationship, for kiddos, for your business, whatever. And, like, all these stepping stones are so critical of, like, breakthrough of, like, what the fuck was I doing for 10 years? Like, and no regrets, but man, it's like, it's a slippery slope and it's a certain person. So if you can kind of get like addicted and slipped into that, that's actually awesome to know. We just have to channel it into like some balanced situations.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened. I mean, he qualified for regionals, whatever that last year was. And that's probably the one thing I've ever said in my relationship that I was like, oh shit, should I have said that? Because I was like, I don't think you should go.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like, oh, I just said that out loud because it was awful. Like, I was always the judge and it was always my fault. And like, it was just.
You were his judge?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God, no way.
Nobody else would do it. Yeah. Like, no one else.
Oh, you mean training wise, not actually at regionals?
No.
Oh, good. I was like, oh my, this should be illegal, I think. No, I'd be like, you're good. You didn't remember him at all. I don't know.
I know, that's the weirdest thing ever. Yeah. So the world record.
Oh, God.
Oh my. Have to know rep it.
Relationship advisors. I always want like to be a call in, not that we have that, but like I need somebody to call in and be like, the fuck are you guys doing? Get out of there.
Nobody else would do it. Like, nobody else would judge him. And so,
there's several opens that people are like, so that was really uncomfortable. Yeah.
So he'd be like, I remember there was a handstand one where he kicked up and he always puts one foot on the
the
wall.
tape ones.
And then he wouldn't get his foot up, so he'd know up the first one, and then he'd yell at me, and I was like, if you slow down, I tell you. Like, it was just.
And so we were sleeping on the couch.
Oh my God. And so then, like, after, he'd be like, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, well, whatever.
You can only say sorry so many times, right?
Yeah.
So I finally said that, and then he was like, I don't think I should either. And that was kind of like the breakdown of everything.
And it's hard to, like, I hate to say detox, but detox or that.
Like,
it's really, and that, like, when your identity's so wrapped around it, and you don't know, because again, like, the 5 people around you or whatever are the most influential, and it's all your same humans. Yeah. It's so hard to, like, break up with that and move forward to the next thing.
Right, and almost, like, let go of the dream to some degree.
Well, just shift it. You know, you do get clung on to what that success or what the dream is. Yeah. But then when you pull back, like everything I appreciate now of the experience are my humans, my friends, people like you guys. Like the richness of that experience was never about medals or games. Like all that stuff's phenomenal. But like
that wasn't actually the thing.
And I'm not just saying that because like it didn't happen like individually, but I mean really looking back, I'm like, thank God it worked out the way it did, and I learned what I did. Because again, my strong, stubborn humans, like we need full kick in the gut till we pivot and shift. Because we'll keep surviving. It's like, I'm going to eat a coffee and energy bar, we're back in. Even though the universe just said stop doing it, we're going to keep running through the wall.
Well, and I think Carson was...
She was just born.
So she was. So that was the other problem. So
problem. That was the other blessing. I love my fitness humans.
So not problem, but like in life. So I had her. She only breast. Well, she didn't. She drank from a bottle, but I only had enough milk for like that feeding.
Oh, okay.
So I had to get up every night in the middle of the night for hours. So he coached the 5:15 every single day for 6 months while still trying to train. And like, there's just a point where you just don't have enough anything. And so there was a lot of that, and understanding that like life did just change a ton, and we're actually not invincible. And and there's this little tiny person that's the most amazing thing ever that changes the perspective. So that all happened, and then when the building got sold, we went down the marketing road, and then like that kind of sent me into my own tailspin. So I was anorexic, bulimic, and then had just kept it going with disordered eating for 20 years.
You weren't anorexic during that time.
No. Sorry, anorexic bulimic in college, and then had just kind of had, how good can my macros be? How tight can I watch everything? And then, when you have kids, it's this, in the athletic world, how fast can you get your body back? So I kind of started to spin, and then I was selling diets, right? Like when we were doing weight loss. And I spun, and, was just getting totally unhappy again, and the expectation of perfection. And our stories are really funny because mine always was on the like looks and nutrition side, and his was like the competitive side. But when you see
it's the same tailspin for
sure.
The
path is the same. The path was the same.
The pattern between us, but like the device was different, but the pattern was the same.
And your competitors at heart. So that competing is applicable to everything.
And you see that with, especially in our space, right? Like, especially you get a lot of the type A personalities that gravitate towards those things.
100%.
You get a lot of the like, no, what do you mean I'm not in control?
Right.
No, control's my world. Like, no.
Did I allow you to say that?
Like control's my world, right? Like, it's like, hold on. Really?
Here's my sheet. Like,
and like trying to get that across oftentimes is like, wait, you're not speaking my language here, right? And so like we saw that with both of us. Is like, again, she used hers as food of like when things would get tough or things would get stressful, especially when there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding what was going on, like whether or not we were going to be able to keep our doors open, whether or not we're going to have a place to house our gym, our livelihood, and everything else. Like mine was, I create busy work and I dive into doing other things, right? Like it was the same thing. Like I was sleeping 3 hours a day and working until 2 in the morning, everything else, and then I'm going to try to train on top of that. Like the reality behind that is like that's punishment, right? Like that's not even coming from a place of love. That's coming from a place of punishment. Hers was the same thing of well, I'm gonna restrict my nutrition. I'm gonna get more dedicated on my nutrition, right? And you can paint that picture however you want, but like I used mine as that device, and she used hers as food.
Or we're masochists at heart, which is also kind of like sick and crazy. But again, if you can kind of pull back, see what it is, and then apply that skill set and personality and DNA and of who you are to other things, it's really an awesome thing if you can lasso it a little bit.
Yeah, and that was where the breakthrough came. Was I listened to a podcast, and a gal named Samantha Skelly, and she was talking about visceral feelings and eating disorders, and I like burst into tears, and I was like, I don't need more macros. I need to figure out why I felt like this for 25 years, and that was the big pivot. So I took her course, the 10-month program to be a certified coach, and all of the stuff that we uncovered is where Shift has now developed. Of now we know why we did it, and we can see in all of these athletes like what they really need, right? And I think the biggest thing was that we realized that people were trying to get an external result to create an internal feeling.
Yes.
And that it doesn't work like that. So when we can say we get to create the internal feeling, and then what happens externally will happen the way it's supposed to. It was such a different way to look at the world. And I mean,
why don't we learn this more young? Like this is stuff that I think you see this in other cultures outside of America. And I'm a patriot at heart on all levels.
Absolutely.
But you see this like internal, or I want to say like get to know yourself education so much earlier. I wish like our kiddos, like, of course that makes sense when you pull it apart. You're like,
Yeah.
you can't fix, this is all external. It means nothing really at the end of the day. And you're in this hyper, like, sexualized culture and competitiveness. Like, CrossFit, everyone's good looking. They're not just in shape. They're like 8 packs and this, and someone just had a baby yesterday and she's now on the cover of God knows what. You're like, what's going on here? And this is without surgery. This isn't even Hollywood zone.
Yeah,
it's just like, what's going, And there's also some genetics in the mix, but
there's some
I got lots of good excuses.
But I think there's goods and bads on both sides, right?
Totally.
I think that's the part that we live is we either on fully on one end of the spectrum or on the other. And it's learning to, like she always says, it's like dance in the grain, right? Like learning to understand that my perspective isn't going to be necessary. Like, you know, like I interpret things the way I do, but it's not necessarily my viewpoint isn't the only way of going about doing things.
Well, we all have different ones. I mean, we are at the end of the day, and it's not anything that is good or bad. We're in charge of our experience, but we don't know how to take responsibility for that experience until we're older. Until again, you get kicked in the gut and you're like, I'm miserable. I'm doing everything right. Why am I not happy? Or like, I thought I wanted to do this. I spent X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars becoming a doctor, and you know what? I want to ride horses or whatever. Like, and it's, again, we miss that internal dialogue or that question of that conversation with ourselves earlier. And I also think, you know, things do happen in due time, but if we could have a little more of that earlier on, but if not, you know, you break down, break through, you pivot, and then you're like, oh.
Well, that's what we finally came to about seeing, you know, because like Court was explaining, when we made the transition, because when we were backed into a corner with the new ownership of our building, that was like, sweet, you think your rent's this, next month it's going up 300%.
They only give you 1 month?
Barely. And so on top of that is like, oh, and we're also going to put you on a month-to-month lease. And we're going to try to sell the building. So if the building gets sold and they don't want you, you can go somewhere else. So they went from like security, like, sweet, we got the next like 10 years to be here and continue build at the rate we're at and everything else, to literally 30 days later be like, yeah, 300% more, and you could be out the doors at the end of this month if we decide to do so.
Cool.
And
it's his life, though.
Yeah. And at the time it was one of those like, you know, my stance was like, how could they do this for me, right? Like, they're trying to take this from me, like victim mentality and everything else. And like looking back, it was like, that was probably one of the best gifts we could ever be given, right? Like, that was probably one of the best things that could have ever probably happened to us as a business owner, of like, no, understanding that they're doing what's right for them as a business, right? Like, they see an opportunity, that's the market that's dictating right there. We didn't do our job as wet behind the ears business owners of like, no, we should have got everything in writing to a staple hold, like, you can't break this even if you come in and do it, but we didn't do that, right? And so that was our bad. But it allowed us to like expand our horizon of like, okay, instead of being content with where we're at, where can we learn to grow? And so we're shaking every tree that we possibly could, and you know, like, yet again, I'd probably say we were probably a month away from having to make the hard decision of whether or not we could stay open.
Yeah, and that's where the ingenuity and creativity and like action comes from, though. Like, I mean, again, you can sit there and you can take the punishment because we do this on the day. We're trained in this. Like, we're trained to suffer and sit here and just until it's like, no, you're done. The workout's over. Life's here. Make a decision. And it really is. As soon as you can get to that space of like, this is such a blessing. You look back and like, you know, could it have been a little easier? Well, maybe would you have listened? Probably not.
No, absolutely not, right?
And when we started to, like, I think that was the biggest thing we learned was, like, everything really is happening in perfect timing. Because when you look back, and you're like, if that seemingly bad thing hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened, that wouldn't have happened. And, like, literally, the path and the mission that we now know is our calling would have never come to fruition if that hadn't happened, right? So, in retrospect, you're like, thank God, because otherwise, like, we would have missed out on all of this growth and all of this learning and uncovering. And I mean, the last 3 years have been crazy, amazing, just untethering all of the things.
I mean, I think you get to like kind of like, it is a certain age where you like start to question a better way and like really get into it, and you've now done a bunch. But the good stuff about, you know, really having these deep breakdowns is now when your clients or your kiddos or whatever comes in, you can speak from such authentic space and like really identify with, you know, their joys, their struggles, where they're at, you know, whatever. And from losing a house, or, you know, I can't pay for my kids, or I can't get this muscle up, or whatever, like, you can really speak from that space, and the audience believes you. Like, that message is so much more impactful, so it's so worth that struggle.
Because it's embodiment, right? Like, we've been through it. We don't just know it. Like, we've been there, and that's what we talk about all the time when we coach now. It's like, you're coaching truly from that heart space and from that place of love and not fear. And that's what we realized, that, like, we and most of our clients show up in a state of fear, right? Like, I mean, that was my...
It's hard to walk in the door at any CrossFit.
Right.
We came in at the right time because you didn't. I was like, what is this shit? Like, whatever. I had military brothers who were like, go do CrossFit. I looked up, I'm like, 100 pull-ups. I'm like, I just came out of a D1 top 20 program. We didn't do that. Why are they? That's dumb. And then I get in there and I was like on bands coming out of like a top program. So you're humbled immediately. But yes, it's a very fearful thing to do.
Well, and just fear in life, right? People are just like, everyone spends so much time on what they don't want, right? Like, I spent 25 years trying to do things so that I wouldn't hate my body.
Yeah.
Versus when the intention changed to, well, what if I wanted to love my body? And what if I do love my body? How would I show up? And the actions are the same, but the intention was so different.
But even that conversation can be kind of taboo.
Oh,
it's
totally.
like, love myself. Well, that sounds very nice.
Oh no, like that's honestly one of the biggest.
I don't love myself.
That's honestly one of the biggest questions that I myself as a male, like usually, especially kind of like talking to a lot of our female clients on there, they look at me kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, usually that's one of the questions, like, when's the last time you told yourself you love yourself?
Yeah.
When's the last time you told yourself that you were proud of yourself?
Yeah.
And not just like, okay, I'm proud that, you know, that I won one, whatever it may be, but like, like literally look yourself in the eye and actually feel it within your soul and your heart, like that you're proud of yourself for what you're doing. And that doesn't mean you're content. That means like right now in this moment you can be blissful, but also you can be blissfully dissatisfied, right? Like you can be blissfully dissatisfied to accomplish and aspire to more. But I think learning to appreciate in this moment in time, because we hear that all the time with like our clients, like, you know, I'm broken. I'm always like, nobody's broken, right? Like, and the problem and the reason why I had my breakdown is because I was starting to filter into the social media craze of like seeing everyone's perfection that they were posting, right? Like every day on somebody's social media was a PR, right? And it's like, I haven't PR in like a year and a half. What's wrong with me, right?
And the camera slides to the right and the back and you're like,
okay.
And it's like, but that's what I based my world off of. And it's like understanding that the things that make us imperfect, supposedly, are the things that actually make us beautiful and that make us who we are, right?
As a branding professional, literally, it's so critical to be like, you got all these boxes checked, but like, give me the deets. Like, let's unpack something that makes you who you are. Like, little stuff, like from the water you drink to how you get out of a chair. Like, this is the brand we got to build out. But yes, I couldn't agree more. You have to learn to appreciate the things that make you authentic and different.
But I think that, especially as parents, like that's the part of really that we see already with our 6-year-old of like, you know, she had her own breakdown earlier because she was afraid to read in class and we had to work on that. Like I've had my own experiences with those things. I hated reading in class. And so like seeing those things and seeing how vulnerable, because yet again, like tying a whole different thing with myself on there, but it's just coming from a place of just scarce and fear and everything else that she's going to expose herself because and other people are going to judge her. And it's like, but I think as parents and as just the world that we're living in is kind of where we could really learn to touch, because we have so many tools nowadays to touch so many people across the world, like right, like this platform we have right here right now.
It's the positive side of social media, really.
And so if we can learn to own the fact of like, yes, I'm not perfect. I know if the second I tell myself I'm perfect, I'm going to get humbled really quickly, right? It's the same thing. I will say that CrossFit has taught me a lot of things, but the first thing it taught me was I don't know everything. What I'm doing doesn't mean I'm doing everything right? Like I had a list of clients.
But I have a spreadsheet.
Like I had clientels that were in the NFL. I was working with the Avalanche. I was working with all these high-level athletes, right? I was doing everything. But then I came in and did my first like week of CrossFit at like a noon class and got wiped by like Mary Jo, the soccer mom that's at home, right? But like, and it, like that humbled me so much of like, you know what? Maybe I don't know everything, and maybe the fact that I can understand that me admitting I don't know everything actually allows me to grow to be a better person and contribute more, right?
We're constantly evolving. Even if you know in that moment, 5 seconds later, it's irrelevant. So you have to like stay on this trend-setting tip to like be ahead of things, particularly if you're in a space of influence, coaching, teaching, parents, whatever. Like it's your responsibility for us to like be like, oh, I thought, you know what? Let me check on that. Let me get in. Let's have a conversation around it.
Yeah, well, and awareness, and that was the thing for us, that it was just like I realized I lived in this space my whole life, and all of a sudden I was like, I wonder what else is like, you know, like I'm still, like, we know awareness is such a growing thing, but just starting to see, like, what are people's needs? Like, why are they actually here? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we say what we say? And the more you can get curious and be like, call yourself on the things and your habits and your stories and start to unpack them, and you're like, gosh, this stuff, I mean, this is what we say to our people all the time. We're like, is it yours? Is it real? Right? Because we're all living in stories that aren't real. They're probably not ours. They're probably not true. And it's like, well, why are we all doing this?
Exactly.
And when you start to ask big questions, they actually don't want to lose 20 pounds. Like, they just actually want to know how to be happy, and they don't know it. And that's now our mission, right? Of like, how do we create whole people that are happy and healthy and contributing and getting their needs met, not losing 20 pounds? Because that's great if that happens, but that's not actually what you want.
Well, that's why, you know, story comes in from like your parents, your influences, your parents, maybe it's marketing and branding. And as I was saying, I'm passionate about this because our young people have cell phones and access, you know, for better or for worse, to all this information earlier. And I think a lot of parents are so busy and trying to keep up that they are more disconnected, and that's not all of them, but just from what I've seen, like, it's really hard. So then that puts responsibility on, you know, coaches, mentors, podcasters, like people that are in front of people to really dive in and like coach that. But if we, I mean, like you guys, I started to question a better way and then dial in and be like, what do I actually give a shit about? What's going on here? Like, what are core values? If I could have done all that earlier, even though I do believe in timing, just like planted a seed, like in middle school, I want to say, kiddos, to be like, do you love yourself? What don't you love about yourself? What do you actually care about? Like light 10,000 foot view type stuff.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Just to open up the doors.
So they're not in the bottle, right? It's like, what if we look at this from over here? And that was my thing with my eating disorder. Like, I had this crazy breakdown and like said out loud the things I'd been thinking, and he's like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, yeah, that's how I thought about my physical body for 20 years. And he's like, that's insane, right? But there was that perceived notion, right? Of like what it was and what it wasn't, and you know, and like the more spiritual we got, and like for me it was morning routine and meditation changed everything. And I'm like, and it's funny we talk about parenting, because now I'll come in, our 4-year-old, if you put her in timeout, you walk in and she's in the bed, she'll sit in the bed like this. Like,
that's so cute. So
like, it's funny. She'll walk in and she'll be Indian style, like totally like hands
oh my god, I love this. That in her friends room, there was a great documentary called The Masks We Wear, and it's about young men and how they're like emotionally overlooked.
Saw that, didn't we? Yeah.
And it's so awesome. And it had like this young boy kind of teaching his dad who just had got out of incarceration, and he was like angry, and he was like channeling his emotion, and they had it in his school. So he's like meditating. I'm like, oh my god, this is no more medication, no more anything. Like, I don't need everybody adapted to thinking, but maybe just a few. Like,
it's just being open. Like, I mean, literally, it's just being open and understanding. Yet again, maybe we don't know everything. Right? I think the part that I have is, if I believe something over here, that also means I have a blind spot over here.
Totally.
Right? And yet again, I can learn, whether it's in strength and conditioning, whether it's being a better parent, whether it's being a better human, whatever, from anyone and everyone. Right? Like, there's little tools and tidbits that if I'm open to observing. I don't have to agree with everything, but if I'm open to taking different tools from all these things, that's when we grow and we contribute to each other, right? And that's when we stand on each other's shoulders and bring all of ourselves to a different level, not just letting our egos drive the ship, right? Like, no, my way is the best way because of other conditioning, or I want to feel significant, or what, like the other things that we're trying to get our needs met on, right? And that's what we really try to get down when it comes to the reason why we, not only obviously on a strength and conditioning realm, like, is a physiology and exercise and all that stuff of understanding, you know, points of performance and progressions and stimulus and all that. Yes, those things are important, right? But what we've seen walk through the door of it is when people come to us, obviously with the hats that we're usually wearing, is, you know, I want this, right? I want to potentially compete at sanctionals, or I want to lose 50 pounds, or I want to do these things, right? And it's like, well, we put ourselves into these boxes where we wear certain masks and into certain hats, and it's like, okay, if I do that, well, that means that the other areas of my life are actually going to shrink. And that's where we both came from, right? It's like, I'm expanding in this area, but the other elements of my life are actually shrinking, right? Like, yes, I'm accomplishing amazing things on a fitness and competitive realm, but my relationship is dwindling, my friendships are dwindling, my mindset sucks, my focus of what I'm focusing on every single day is actually negative, it's actually bringing me less joy, right? Like, I'm succeeding in the things that I thought I wanted and what's got me into that, but really what I was trying to accomplish was, you know, feeling significant, feeling like those things, where initially it came from a place of love, but after a while it was like, I need my community to hold me to a higher level, right? And it's like, they didn't care. When it really came down, they wanted me to be the best person that I could be, that contributed to making them, or allowed them to experience the experience they walked through the door. They didn't care whether or not I made the games. They didn't care about those things. But it took that breakdown and really looking back of like, I was doing that because I needed certainty in my life. I needed, you know, I needed significance in my life. That was my way of meeting love and connection. That was my way of meeting these certain things that wasn't healthy at all. Right. But it was because what I was interpreting and what, yet again, the way of, like, things that I thought I needed when I was growing up, and things that, like, you know what, if I'm not a stud athlete, maybe my parents won't love me. Maybe those things.
This is what we learn, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is our experience are shaped. And I think it's really important. It was kind of like, it's funny where the business and, I think all things kind of fit together, but the business and personal and sports worlds kind of connect. I loved college. We were just talking about, like, maybe going to college, maybe not, because things are changing. But I do remember Econ 101, like day one there, like the explanation of opportunity cost. And that has so resonated with me forever. So I'm glad that 100K at school paid off. But, you know, it's real simple. If you're doing something, you're not doing something else. And, like, there's no free lunch. Everything has a cost. It may not be monetary, it may not be calorically, it may be energy, we don't really know. But you have to be able to pull back and be conscious of, like, where's energy going, and keep good people around you, because no matter how good and conscious and whatever you are, you get lost in it. And you need good humans around you to be like, yo, I need you to breathe. Like, we worked out 8 days this week. Like, you need to chill. Or, you know, get off the couch. We haven't worked out any days this week. So, I mean, you just got to keep that crew around you. And I think if you can have a partner in crime that's, like, similar to experience and can hold that accountable, like, this is, like, relationship goals for me right now. That's good for me to see you guys. Because it's really critical. And, like, this is, like, really deep, woke stuff, unfortunately. So it's hard to find that common ground, but I think it's amazing to have that as your partner in crime, as your husband, wife, and business associates. I always admire couples that work together, because I'm like, okay. Well, I don't know about that, but
because we get that a lot. We get that a lot of, like, you know, how do you guys do that? Because we'll get contacted every now and then, you know, with different groups of stuff we're in. Like, well, how do you guys do that? Can you like sit down and, like, couple counsel my wife and my girlfriend and I? Like, I mean, for us, it took a little bit of, like, kind of finding, you know, her area expertise, and then, like, learning, like, okay, you do yours, you do, and, like any
business, though, that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, I will admit, like, my ego has gotten
I'm the man.
Like, kind of thing on that.
But like, I picked you, so you breathe.
Yeah. But I mean, for the most part, like, we've been very fortunate on that. But I mean, we talk about that all the time. Of, like, if we didn't have each other, I couldn't imagine doing this, I mean, without her to begin with. But at the same time, I couldn't imagine living a lifestyle that was somebody that didn't understand this, right? Like, it's kind of like that celebrity thing. Like, you don't date somebody that's not in the club, right? Because they don't understand the lifestyle. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like, when you're constantly going and you're constantly aspiring for those things. Because, I mean, I'll have that conversation with my mom. And it's like, when we're going through just the tough times and all these things, just venting. She's like, why don't you just quit and get a 9 to 5? I'm like,
well, no, I gotta play later.
Why would you even, like, say that, right? Like, you don't, like,
give me dad.
But like, when you're doing these things of, like, I don't know, like, for me, it's just crazy. Like, even though after working, you know, 80 hours a week, and, like, all those things of, like, the uncertainty comes around it. But at the same time, I'm knowing that our effort that we put in is also going to be a direct reflection of what we're aspiring to create, right? Like, all the things that have happened for us in perfect timing, but it's being aware and being open to it.
Yeah.
Right?
And being open to grow. I mean, when I started my program, it was like this huge untethering and all the stories and all the things. And there was a ton of women in my program that their husbands just, like, they didn't want to grow and they didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, how are you having, like, because I'm a completely different human than I was 2 years ago. And I'm like, how do you go through that and not have
the support? Because you need support
in
all things.
He was my biggest supporter and my biggest, and, like, but he grew with me. Right? It wasn't like,
but dude, that doesn't always happen.
No,
I mean, when you fall in love and you're young, you make these decisions young, not knowing any of this conversation. So you're like,
so the fact that, like, we've been willing to grow together and push each other. We were talking about this the other day. I was like, sometimes you ask me questions that I don't want to be asked, right? Because you'll be like, well, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, don't coach me right now. I don't know. But that's what's been really amazing. And, like, entrepreneurs are a different breed, I think.
Well, it all comes together. Again, type A, we're seeking different ways. We want things a certain way. We're okay with failure. We're down with being masochists. Like, I mean, it's kind of all the good, like, super good, and then all the super bad. And then you have to work to find that balance of all things. And you really have to be ready to fail, and, like, constantly, like, even as you, I couldn't tell you how many contracts I've had and things that were going so well. I'm like, we're ending this, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, start back over, you know, revamp things, but that never ends. I mean, you can't get comfortable.
No.
That's why you got to seek joy in some of these like outlets and conscious of where you're spending your time and energy, because shit is hard and it's awesome. It's rewarding. It's so worth it on all levels, but it's really, really hard. And you have to come from secure space, because you are constantly going to be checked. Ego, the way you look, the way you speak, what you're talking about.
Well, I think it's coming from, you know, it's for us, it's that same thing. I mean, obviously, you know, growth mindset has gotten a lot more traction, you know, Carol Dweck and everything else, but also the same thing as, you know, the vertical mindset is the same thing of like understanding that every obstacle, every time I fall down on my face, that's actually there to lift me up, to teach me something to aspire to more, right? Because, I mean, we tell all the time, like, failure shouldn't, I mean, I'm not one of like, failure is kind of a trigger word for me, but at the same time, it's one of those, to me, failing is, you only fail if you don't use it as a learning opportunity and apply it to the next time it comes around. Because everything happens in reciprocal fashion for us, right? Like everything happens in patterns, everything happens to there. So if you fall down on your face on one endeavor, whether it be a contract falling through, a business deal or whatever, there's a learning opportunity that you can come to apply to the next deal.
100%.
Right? And so if you can do that same thing, whether it's in the gym or whether it's with your kids, right? Because Lord knows there's 8 million how to be a parent book out there.
I haven't entered that zone. This is another like nutrition wellness, so bless my parents.
But I know there was never a book written on how to parent me. There was another book never written book how to parent my.
They got rid of that book, but there was for me.
And so it's being able to learn like, because I mean we do that with our kids now. Like, well, what I told Carson, our oldest, would not work at all for our youngest. Right? And
that's like coaching though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because we had that forever. Like, what did you just tell that person? Well, I told them to do this. I've been telling them the same thing for the last 3 months. All I did is just tell them to pull their elbows up. Really? That's all I had to do, right?
I would always say, it's like, this guy's here 5 minutes and you listen, and I was like, what? Like, you know?
But I mean, it's that side of like, okay, maybe I need to increase my Rolodex of what I use, right? Like, I need maybe to be, yet again, open to different platforms of just using and aspiring to something.
Or let someone else coach them a little bit. Like, that's okay. It's not that you failed in that, like you said.
Yes.
It's that you just shift, you know, the perspective. Maybe a woman speaks better with a woman, or maybe a woman speaks better with a man. And like getting to know that piece of it without having to say anything or kind of direct makes you a good coach.
Yeah. Well, and understanding that certain people take different things different. I mean, we've been doing this long enough that we have athletes that we know certain things come better for me, certain things come better from him. They'll have certain conversations with us, which is great, because if we were the exact same person, then that wouldn't be helping anyone, right? And so when you're coaching from your space and your authenticity and growing that, and I think that's been the other thing for us, is just learning more about energy and feminine and masculine energy and how that plays. And like we were both always in the masculine hustle, and we were never going to get anywhere. And so for me, like actually learning like how to be in a feminine flow and coach breathwork and like, I mean, I was like, wow.
Lady.
Yeah, I was like, wow, there's this whole other side. I'm like, I don't have to get up at 4 a.m. and listen to Grant Cardone, but
don't you get up at 3:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's to meditate, right?
Okay. That counts 100%.
That's like my zone of genius.
God,
and it's funny because he's a night person, and our kids are the same. My little one will get up with me. Like, what time did you come down this morning? 4.
Oh my! And that's like sleeping in. Oh, see, I'm completely opposite.
Well, he had to coach, so I'm downstairs, and Sky's on the couch, and she's like, "Can we watch TV?" And like he comes down, she's chattering away, and our oldest is totally a night person. Like they're very clearly like she's the little one's me and older one's him. But it's just funny because I'm like, do not talk to me past like 6 o'clock because I got nothing. But at 3 a.m. I can like.
What time do you go to bed for real?
I try to go to bed by 8.
Okay, that's not that bad. I thought you were going to say like 6 p.m. Sometimes I don't even dinner. Like I'm not even eating dinner until like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
I gotta get better, but it's random right now.
That's where I'm at.
But I'm just done by then. But like I wake up naturally a lot at like 2:30, and I've just been like, well, it's okay, right? Like it's funny that it doesn't seem like the middle of the night anymore.
Really? Even though it's dark for like 5 more hours. You're just like vampiring out in the kitchen.
Totally. I'm like, it's good. Sometimes the morning class is like, why are you still awake? I'm like, I've been up for 3 hours.
I've had a whole day.
I've written blog posts, I've meditated, I've done yoga.
I will say that does make it hard to that relatability when somebody's like, I can't make it till like the 8 o'clock.
It's so early.
That's past noon. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, yet again, like the young 20-something, I can relate. Like, you forget what that's like to have that kind of lifestyle. Like, but at the same time, like, we got to rearrange your life a little bit.
Yeah. Well, all things in due time. And I kind of want to circle back because of like universe, energy, spirituality, or religion, however it's kind of packaged. I always say it's similar in game. I think that's so critical to kind of get into the play. When you pull back and you look and you're like, oh my gosh, all of these things really added up to right now to let me be exactly where I'm at. And thank God all this happened because I'm now qualified to get into this space and like fully embrace what it is. And like when you're acting from points of service and doing it the right way, you do let go of like doing it for yourself, and then good things come in. Like it's crazy to see this shift.
Yeah, the law of attraction is real. I mean, we got so like we were so in hustle and overwhelm and struggle, and that's where most of our clients are. And I remember my coach in my program, she's like, control is an illusion. And like we talked about earlier, I was like, wait, hold up, like that's what do you mean it's an illusion? Like I was really sort of like, that can't be, right? But then when you step back and you're like, I can create anything, I can create how I feel, I can create my life, I can create exactly what I want in conjunction with the universe. It's such a different feeling of that faith versus fear, and the trust, and the, you know, just really leaning in and believing that stuff has been...
Well, just trusting in larger order.
Yeah.
And knowing that, like, universe has your back, or God has your back, or whatever you believe that... Because and then you have that affirmation, that proof, and you can look back when you get old enough and you're like, damn, thank God that went the way it did. Or thank God I learned this then, or... whatever, and that does. It takes some time. So if you can survive that first like 25 years, maybe 30, then you can look back and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, those are all life lessons, right?
Totally.
They're all life lessons. But I think the part that really came to us is understanding, you know, for her is, yet again, she was trying to meet her needs in certain ways, right? Like she was going through all this to meet her needs. I was going through all the same thing, right? And like it was based off of modeling, conditioning, everything else since she was a little girl. And then same thing, I had my own interpretation of modeling, conditioning, things I had from when I was growing up in my own standpoint of worthiness as an athlete, or not smart, or whatever it may be, right? And so that's the part that we really try to get our clientele to open up more, right? And really get people to come from a different place of understanding, right? Because, you know, when it comes to shift is, you know, we're really, instead of compartmentalizing ourselves of like, okay, you walk in through our doors, you want to get your fitness on. That's awesome, right? Like, let's aspire to being a better human being, because I do think, and I know, like, if you get better at being, you know, implementing, you know, fitness and health and all those things, they do transcend to other elements of your life, right? Like, you do learn, you know, a lot of things, like same thing when you learn as being in sports, and like you learn a lot more life lessons than you do as far as being a good athlete, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But more importantly, like, okay, but instead, let's bring the whole picture up together, right? Like, let's not just look at, you know, your fitness and your nutrition. Like, are those important? Yes, because at the same time, if you're not moving your body around, you're also not probably functioning at the highest level you could be functioning, right? Like, if you're not eating nourishing foods, despite whatever clan that you want to attach yourself to, right? Like, our thing is like, you know, when we first opened, yet again, came across as like, no, you got to do it this way, you got to do this. Like, what allows you to fit into your lifestyle, that allows you to be happy, allows you to aspire to the things that you want to create? Because that's the other thing we come across is one of the first things we come is like, well, what do you want to create in your life? And like, well, what do you mean? I came in the door to lose 20 pounds, right? Like,
look good.
Yeah, like, well, no, what kind of human being do you want to be? Right? Like, what kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of business, like, what kind of coworker do you want to be? What kind of brother, son, dad, whatever it may be, like, what do you aspire for, not just in the next, like, 60 days of your life, but who do you aspire to be, you know, the next 10 years, 20 years on? When you're on the rocking chair and you're looking back at your life, like, what do you want to be able to say in your life that you accomplished, right? Like, how can we go about putting those things into play so you can accomplish those things over the next 60 years of life, not looking back of like, I wish I could, right? Because we all, like, you hear that all the time of like people go into a nursing home, the biggest thing they're going to say is, I wish I would have done this, right? And it's like, well, how can we go back? Because for me, I've learned like one of my biggest values that I don't want to aspire for is regret. Right, because we get into a lot of rules and values and stuff like that with our clientele, getting an understanding. Like, it's not just the goal that you need to aspire for, but it's understanding how that models in within your world of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. 100%. But understanding, like, does that allow you to experience happiness? Not only does it allow you to experience happiness, does it allow the other people around you to also experience happiness, right?
Just like we talked about before, right?
Yeah, which is critical.
And you know, those are questions that literally, I'd say 100%. Like, the second we bring those questions up, they look at you like blank stare of like, I don't know. I know all I was supposed to know is I'm supposed to graduate high school, graduate college, get the house with 3.5 kids, have a white picket fence,
make X amount of
dollars, get this
success.
permission, and then all of a sudden I have this, but I feel empty. Right? Like I don't feel the sense of pride. I don't feel the sense of accomplishment. I don't feel the sense of just progress on a day-to-day basis. I don't have any sort of just excitement that gets me out of bed, right? Like I hit the snooze alarm every single day. Like we had this conversation with a couple of our clients of like, I don't know why, but Monday morning takes me the longest to get ready. It was like, well, you don't have any excitement, right? Like you don't have anything pulling you out of bed.
You got shit you want to do.
And but I think a lot of it, and because what we were listening to, and not to say that we don't need action, because you need action no matter what you do, right? Like you can't just sit in the woods and say affirmations all the time and think the world's going to align up for you.
But
right?
I do want to do that.
But there's a time and place. I mean, and we because in part of our shift program we have different gears that we talk about. We talk about downshift. We have cruise.
Well, so I just want to pull back just so listeners are clear. CrossFit Surge, and from that you saw a discrepancy in how you're doing your clientele. So then births shift. Which is an all-encompassing program. I'll let you explain. I just want to make people understand now where this inspiration came from. And then just because I want them to dig into this and check you guys out and see what it is, because I so appreciate in the CrossFit fitness space, we're now diving deeper. And I'm yet to really, I know Ben Bergeron does some mindfulness, and we've done a bunch with Invictus. CJ's awesome with Invictus. But outside of that, and you guys, and I'm kind of out of the CrossFit loop at this point, but there's not a ton around it. So when I saw you doing this, I just want to make sure we package it so people understand. But keep going with your flow. I just want to make sure they get what it is fully.
Just kind of an overview as far as shift it's looking at our life as all encompassing, right? So we have, we look at it as we have 5 elements of our life. We have feel, we have focus, we have move, we have nourish, and we have your environment. And so inside those things, we look at them as they're not segregated, they're not in their own separate entity, they all overlap. And so it's with that understanding that if I just focus on movement, right? If I just come into the CrossFit gym and I'm just focusing on my movement or maybe my nourishment, right? But if I'm not nourishing my soul with the things that I read, if I'm not surrounding myself with positive people, if I'm not reading things, if I'm not doing those kind of things, yet again that area of my life may be shrinking. And same thing if I'm not moving my body in good space, or if whatever it may be on different stages of my life.
Or moving your emotions.
If those areas are shrinking, that centerpiece within that encompassing part is essentially my best self. That's my fulfilled self. And so the way we look at it is the more we can expand those areas or even just bring them closer together, the more full of my best version I'm going to be of myself, and more fulfilled I'm going to be, right? Like I'm not only going to have accomplishment, but I'm going to have fulfillment. And at the same time with that is understanding that when I have focus and feeling and essentially emotional intelligence and understanding visceral intelligence of where I'm focusing on, where my needs are coming from, where you can call it mindfulness. Some people call it those things. If I'm present, what is my nourishment of the things I'm listening to, not just what I'm putting into my body, because yes, those do make it. Obviously, that does make a difference of how you're going to function, how you're going to do those things. But it's more understanding like, okay, on your best day, right? Like I want you to picture your best day, right? Like you were on point, you were vibrant, you were awesome. Everyone responded so much. You walked in the room and you just had like a glow come through, and everyone smiled. What did that feel like? And how can we aspire to replicate that every single day, right? Like not coming from a place of punishment or maybe measuring macros or like getting married to those kind of things. And like, do they have a place in time? Yes, potentially. Yeah. But how can we get that and aspire to creating that day by day by day? Because if we can do that, you're probably going to see a lot of success in your life. Not to mention, you're going to feel really, really good about yourself. You're going to be happy. You're going to experience a lot of love. And not to mention, you're going to spread that to everyone else around you.
So when you're saying this to you, because I mean, literally, like quite simply saying, you're really like bringing the unconscious conscious to all these things, because they're all coming together. And that's again, that's why I love we went through kind of like all the ethos of giving to what this is, so listeners can really understand. Like, I mean, you guys bleed it, you lived it, and now you're here. And then there's authenticity behind this. It's not about adding margin to the gym. It's really about change. When you say all this and the unconscious are not becoming conscious, do they believe you? Like, because this is sales at its finest.
I think a lot of times. So what we realize is, talking about people aren't talking about this stuff.
Totally.
But the biggest piece that I think nobody's talking about is actually feeling. Yeah. And what we have known to be true for us and for everyone we talk to is that, like, as kids, most of us have learned in our society not to feel.
Or don't talk about it.
Right. Oh, you're
Or
fine.
shun
Or just
it.
push it down. You know, like, people have eating disorders. People have people have drug
There's
problems.
everything disorders.
All of
Like,
that.
you name it and it's
because
there.
we're not feeling. We're like, well, if I just change my state by overworking out, by over drinking, by under eating, by
Look
whatever.
good on Instagram.
Yeah, and then you're like, but you're not feeling. And so what we've really started to tell people is like, we're gonna help you like actually pull back some layers, and they're kind of like, okay, like it's scary,
I was
right?
saying, some people just run away. Like, is it too much?
And you see,
Sometimes,
like,
yeah.
timing.
well, you
Yeah,
see people's protectors come up. You see like
Yeah.
people. You can see avoided protectors come. You see busy. Like I was busy work. Like I can dive into. I'm busy. I got other things to work on. It's like, well, let's tie into this, right? And especially when you're coming to athletes that are walking through the door with thinking you're wearing a different hat, like. You get into it, especially when we've been trying to, especially get a lot of athletes to understand this, because athletes, it's masculine, right? Like action. Like no, give me my platform, give me my workout template, give me all these things, and give me my nourishment template, give me those things, and I will go through there, right? Like it's action. Okay, when's the last time you had a conversation with yourself as footers, like? What was your thought process? Not just on the side, like what was your internal talk, right? Like, but on a sense of understanding, because I found this for myself. Like I did one of her breath work sessions for the first time, and I really realized that I don't know how to feel, right? Like as a male growing up, it was, oh, you fell down, scraped up your elbow, rub some dirt on it, get back out there, right? Like, oh, you broke your hand, like you tape it up, you get back out in the game, right? Like that's the way you're supposed to do, right? And it's like, is there a place and time for that? Yes, because yet again, like. It did create toughness and mental time and all those kind of things on there, but it also got me to neglect a lot of my feelings. Like I saw this in patterns in my own relationship history, right? Like I had somebody I was with from the times I was 15 all the way through 23, right?
Oh my God, that's like 6 Hollywood marriages.
Yeah, like,
okay.
I thought I was getting married, and then all of a sudden I lost my sense of identity because I was no longer playing football. Like and all of a sudden I was stifling, I was avoiding, I was doing all the things that I interpreted as a kid and everything else. So like that's what you're supposed to do with your feelings, right? And God forbid being in a locker room, dudes don't talk about their feelings, right? Like you don't do that stuff. Like you bring it up to your best friend and kind of looks at it like, what are you talking about? Right? Like you mean like
or short bar.
Yeah, you say drinking.
Yeah. Like, you have the late night like after last call, like man, I feel like whatever, but for the most part you don't do that, right? And so what I realized for myself is when I was having those times of using her as an outlet when I was frustrated as an athlete, when I was doing things, it was because I didn't know how to interpret my own feelings.
Totally.
Right? And
it's a skill set.
I mean, like you may have saw, like I put out a post a couple weeks ago as just like a poll question of like the old adage of like, you need to train yourself to be stronger than your emotions. Otherwise, like it's the old saying, like you've probably seen it around like Facebook or social media, whatever it may be. And like I put out there like, can you relate with this? Do you believe this is true? I mean, I put it on all different platforms and everything else, and I think I don't know the exact number how many responded, but is 97% of the people responded said yes, absolutely, and like 35% were like yes, that is the most. If you relate to your feelings or you listen to your feelings, it will kill you every single time. And it's like, well, really, that's what's causing more problems than anything else, because your feelings, like we've learned, when we tell our clients, like your feelings, all they are is action signals. It's a directional, it's a cop out in the middle of the intersection telling you not to go or to go in a certain direction, right? And if you can learn, because what I'm still learning a lot from her on that, is understanding that the mind is your thoughts, your body is your feelings, right? And when you're born, those two things are automatically connected. But as we go through different scenarios of being conditioned, whether your parents told you like, stop crying, I don't want to hear you whine, you can't have that toy, whatever it may be, like we learn to stifle or project, or nowadays with Facebook and stuff like that, you see people compete with their feelings, like, right, like, oh, you had a bad day? Let me tell you about my day, right?
I will never be that, but no judgment that.
But
it's not my flow.
But you see people do that, right? We all have our ways of working through that.
Yeah.
But we don't honor what those things are actually there to teach us.
We don't know how. Right? I mean, and that's the thing, people don't know how to feel. I mean, that has been the biggest thing, is that, and we talked about this, I think when he finally first got it, I was like, okay, you can be the best athlete ever, and have the best mindset and done all the training, and you walk up to the line and you're about ready to go, and you look at the guys beside you and your brain's like, okay, I got this, and your body's like, shit!
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, the sensation's gonna win. That sensation every time is gonna win. So I'm like, how do we learn to feel them, love them, accept them, change the stories, right? Change the feedback loops, because when you can say, like, this is here for a reason, and I have visceral intelligence, and I can listen to my intuition and even know that it's there, like, that's where, like, that's the universal guidance, right?
Truth has a frequency. You can just learn to tap
in. And believe it, because a lot of people feel it, but they're like, no, I'm going to go here, because my brain is safe.
We've always been taught that.
Yeah.
That's what I was curious, like, when you're saying this to people, and these, I'm assuming, are over 18 adults.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, because this is still, again, unfortunately, it's still new conversation, and I love that you guys are on the front lines of pushing this through, because, I mean, I actually think, like, on, you know, macro scope, that this is what our country needs. Personally, politically, you know, getting along with your neighbor, understanding one another.
Well, because I know for me, like, what really has transcended me on just my journey for the last, you know, couple of years especially, is understanding that all the judgment, all the other things that I've ever had, I've projected that.
Sure.
Right? Like, everything that I've gotten upset about, right? Like, somebody cuts me off in traffic, I get pissed off, it ruins my day. There's underlying reasons for that, right? Like, if we can stop living from a surface area, or maybe just one level deep, and get deeper and deeper, and learn to ask ourselves more inquisitive questions, and come from a place of curiosity and wanting to really understand ourselves, then we can understand. Then for me, I really feel kind of that same realm of, we can come not together just on an athletic standpoint and aspire to more, but more on just a human race, right? Like, of understanding that when we're kids, when we're born out, like, you put kids together, they play together, right? Like,
totally.
They're not, they don't like, they're
not
under judgment, there's anything going on there, but because of the conditioning we have as we go through things, whether it's our parents, whether it's social media, whether it's friends, or whether it's an influencer from somewhere else, that's what breeds us to create these things within our life, right? And so it's bringing it back to understand that the only judgment I have is the judgment on myself, right? Like, she did this a while back of, like, you know, I came back from going to the store, and, like, the young teenagers pulled up right to the front spot, blocked out everything, and I, like, got back and, like, losing my shit, and it's like, well, or she was like, well, why are you losing, right? Why does that bother you so much? Come to find out, is because I did that as a kid.
I was gonna say my young self.
Like, I did that, right? Like, the whole world can wait for me. I'm gonna pull up, and not only am I gonna pull up, I'm gonna open my door so nobody can get by, right? Like, now my buddy can jump in right the first thing. But it bothered me.
It took like 2 days though for him to realize it, because I was like, well, why is that such a big deal? He's like, there's these kids you take, whatever. And 2 days later, he's like, oh. Because I'm that kid.
Yeah. Here we are. We're back here.
Because it's my own internal wounding that needed to be healed, and kind of going over those things. But it's understanding that we are, yet again, life is happening
all the
for
time.
us, right? Like, it's the projection that I have in my mind that is creating my own path of life, right? And I think the second we can own that, right? Like, it's coming back to that extreme ownership side, but not from a place of, like, you own all your shit, right? It's more on the side of, like, no, I'm owning it because it allows me to understand that I hold the paintbrush in my hand. I'm the architect of my experience that goes on through here. Does her loving me, does my kids, does all those things help me? Is that icing on top of my cake? Yes.
It's a value add.
Yes, it's a value add. But that doesn't make me essentially who I am.
Totally. Right? And that even itself, people are like, oh, like, that feels wrong. It's like the traditional American values. It should be, you should lead everything for everyone around you. Yeah. But really, like, if you do, I've done tons of meditation, not like super deep, which I want to get more into, but like self-work, coaching in business, blah, 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 getting back to like you. And I remember I had one, she's like a retired therapist, and now she has this whole modality of like, not life coaching, but kind of awesome. And she's like, I'm going camping this weekend. I'm like, oh, who are you going with? She's like, me. I'm like, what about your husband? She's like, oh no. She's like, I love him, but there's no one I'd rather hang out with than me. And I was like, yes, bitch, okay. I'm like, are you Madonna? Like, what's going on here? And she's like, that's where you get to. Like, you do this really, like, you got to understand you are one person and you are a whole person. And then you have these extenuating factors around you that help define your reality, and their complements and value to your world. But you are one. Like, you are right here in your own space. But I mean, for so many people, and even for myself, like the influencer thing and posting pictures by yourself, I'm still uncomfortable with that. And it's good practice on social. But it's weird. And being like in that very myopic space is so foreign to our culture and what we've come from and everything. And yet it's so important to come back and be able to say that and be like, I have to be a whole human, so I'm 100% for everything that matters.
Right, because you can't, like, when you have places that needed to heal, and we talked about this, like, I couldn't really receive the love from him because I wasn't giving it to myself. And like, you can only receive as much as you're willing to give to yourself. And so it was this whole thing of like, learning of like, wow, I just need to heal this stuff and I need to work on this. And that's why I get up at 3 a.m. because I'm like, I need that space and that time. And, you know, and then on to that, like I learned how to, I'm a breathwork facilitator, which is the coolest, like, unknown. You're literally just breathing, but you get so much deeper in your subconscious.
And this is old school technology
and
too.
Yeah, super old.
I bet if
no one does it.
This is on my thing too.
Who's
the guy from Iceland, the main guy around it?
Wim Hof.
Wim Hof. Yeah. I feel like his name sounds like his.
It's gonna make sense.
I'm like Wim Hof. Like it's all kind of. I'm like I'm Brandon. I wouldn't know that.
And it's like it's so old, but it's not mainstream in our society, right? Like other Eastern cultures, they're all doing this. But when you start to do that for people, and they go, oh my God. I mean, the first time I did it, I came downstairs and I was like, I feel like I'm on drugs. I have no idea what just happened, but I feel really, really good. Yeah. And I don't get it, right? Because I didn't know how to like go internal and see what was there and find all the things. And it's like, when you can give people that glimpse, and that's why I think breathwork is cool, because so many people are like, you want me to do what?
Yeah.
And then you're like, just come hang out with me for 30 minutes. And then they do it and they're like, oh, okay.
But like, I mean, that's kind of what you guys are doing with Shift. Like, even, I don't think you can sell them right away, but just enough to plant the seed to get them to come back one day, and then the next day, and then the next day. Like, then I think you slowly get it. And again, likely these are like community leaders in their own communities. So then that whole trickle down effect starts to happen, and that's real impact. Like, that's awesome. It's
getting people to understand that all we are is balls of energy. Right? Like, that's proven. We're just energy, right? Like, we're just moving those things. And it's understanding that it's an energetic exchange no matter what we do, right? And understanding that when we have emotions, yet again, if we're getting back to the feeling portion of things, if I'm not honoring my feelings, they're good. They have to go somewhere, right? And so oftentimes they get locked in our central nervous system, whether it's trauma, whether there's those kind of things. And if I shut the door on those things and I don't allow myself to go through those, and we were big on that. You don't have to go back and dwell on it, because that's what tends to happen with most people is like, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to dwell on my feelings and I'm going to just overwhelm myself with all these. Like, no, let's go back in there. But what is this? What is the story? What is the decision you made in that moment in time that's creating what's happening now, right? Because on an athletic standpoint, we've had this with athletes of they're training till they're blue in the face, right? Their nutrition's down, they're doing all these things, but at the same time, it's like, well, why are we not having this breakthrough for you to see the things that you're on paper should be experiencing, right? Well, we've had like different athletes come up like, well, during some phase of my life, like we had one that was, he was 5 years old, he got held underwater in a pool, right? And so he experienced a traumatic event. Well, that traumatic event was locked into his central nervous system. So when he felt the sensation, because he shut the door on that thing of like when he felt the sensation of all of a sudden not being able to breathe, in CrossFit you need to be able to function under high heart rate, right? And be able to move and do those things. But once he started getting into that same state, his body, because that was still locked in his nervous system, sensed that of, oh my God, I'm going to die potentially, that it would shift him away. All of a sudden, he'd go to the chalk bucket, he'd take a knee, he'd go walk around, he'd do these kind of things.
Your inner child is like, I mean, it's running everything. And when you don't realize where that trauma is, you're like, oh, that's why I do that, or that's why that happens.
Yeah, so it didn't matter what the self-talk was. It didn't matter how many affirmations of like, you got this, you're all good, like you put in your training. It didn't matter, because the visceral feeling that was coming through his nervous system was talking to his brain of fight or flight, of like, hey, something's happening right now, you need to get the hell away from here. So it didn't matter how much training we put into it, that same response when he was 5 years old continued coming through the loop. And so it's allowing us to take, yet again, dive deeper of opening up the door, right? Because most people, it's scary, right? Like it's scary going into the unknown, right? And because yet again, it ties into our needs. Like we tie into we use a lot of the stuff that Tony Robbins and Chloe Madonis and stuff like that talk about, our 6 human needs. We dive into like, okay, what needs are most important to you? You go into rules and values, but at the same time tying into what are the stories surrounding that, right? Like if that sensation's coming through and you haven't talked or honored that or even acknowledged that for the last 50 years of your life, that's still running you. And you can do all the training you want, but until we go back and understand what was happening in that moment in time and change the story and change the picture that's surrounding that, you're going to continue spinning your wheels as an athlete, and you're going to continue being frustrated, like, I'm doing all the things, why can I not break through? Well, and
then they're mad at you as a coach.
Yeah.
Well, so walk me through that. Like, so if you saw this happening, how did you guys because this is a heavy conversation, especially like mid or post workout, and you're woozy and you're kind of not all there. At least you got some endorphins to buffer that. But you know, how, like, walk me through that conversation of like, how do we get from frustrated athlete to like, now we've changed the narrative, we've changed the approach, and now we've got.
So the big thing that it's big thing that I've tried to really become better as a coach, and yet again, it's putting my ego aside, is being better at asking questions.
Yeah.
Questions run everything. Questions run are like, if I want you to hear me right now, how do I got to lean into the mic, right? Like, if I wanted to get here, driving, how do I get there? If I want to tie my shoe, how do I tie my shoe? Like, everything we do, before we do anything, has to start with a question, right? And so, if we can learn to be better question askers as a coach, most of the people, and this is where the uncomfortableness comes from, because we try to ask questions that most people probably have never been asked before.
Sure.
Right?
And so, they don't want to answer.
They don't want to answer.
Yeah.
And so you can see people, like, when they know the answer, right, when they have certainty surrounding the answer of like, sweet, I've been eating this, I've been getting this for sleep, I've been doing this. What was your childhood like?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I love it, but that's where it's at.
Well,
that's
like,
hard.
what was your relationship like with your dad? Right? Like, who's the person you crave love from the most? Right? Like, what, and then why? Right? Like, who did you have to be for that person? And you find out, like, oh, I want to be a doctor because the only way that I ever got love from my parents was that I had to be a straight A student, right? Like, for me, my story was, and it was my own interpretation, was I had to be a good athlete. I had to be all conference. I had to go play college football. I had to do these things in order for my dad to feel like I was going to receive love from my dad. And after having that conversation, when I was deciding to walk away from it, he was like, that's the most insane thing that ever thought you could ever interpret, right? But that was my interpretation, right? And so, because yet again, like, I had other stories wrapped around it, but that was what was breeding my decisions all the way up into that point. It was understanding that I was living somebody else's story, not based off of whether they really wanted me to, but because my own interpretation of what it was. And so when we go through that.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is the phases, right? So there's downshift, there's cruise, and then there's accelerate, right? Okay. And so most people just want to be, like, they're in hustle, and the difference between hustle and accelerate is inspired action, right?
Well, it's give me action, right? Like, it's give me.
Yeah, and so it's getting people to actually slow down, to meditate, to journal, to be aware, to find curiosity, right? Like, we have 6 core parts of it. It's curiosity and connection, and it's just like, once you can pull back and get people to slow down and be and start to have some awareness. Because we don't know the answers for our clients, right?
Well, every human internally has, we have all our truths. You have
the answers within it, right? Like, so me telling you doesn't do any good.
Right. Try to give you strategies of how do you actually downshift, how do you create space in your life, how do you create time in your life, whether it's breath, whether it's meditation, whether it's going on a walk, like, purposely create space, because the answers will come through. And then ask yourself those questions in that state, right? And be open and non-judgmental, and that's the biggest thing, right? Of being like, oh, I'm a terrible person, or I'm here because of this. It's like, no, it's just, it is what it is, and you get to be aware of it, accept it, love it, and then you create what you want. And so we do so much, like, and that's the idea with shift, is that it's slow, right? Like, you're not gonna have this change in 6 weeks. Like, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 10 years.
And are people good with that? Because we want, give me the diet pill.
I think sometimes I think that's the part that we get fed a lot through the gurus of, like, you know, honestly, that's what really got us on this path, is because we did the challenge. Like, we did the challenge for a whole year. Like, we did the challenge mentality. On the monetary side of it, it saved our gym. Like, it saved our gym and allowed us to stay open because it allowed us to do those things. But at the end, we saw 100, 150 people get amazing results. Like, the deal behind it was, you know, you come in the door, you want to lose 25 pounds or 6% body fat. You put X amount down. If you hit your goal, we'll give you your money back.
Okay.
Like, and so the thought behind that is like, okay, if you hit your goal, if you walk in the door and you want to lose 6% body fat or 25 pounds, the thought in our mind was likelihood that you're going to want to stay and become a member, right? Like, you're accomplishing things that you never thought. We would have months and months and months. Like, we would have been like, I pride myself. I think we're very good at what we do.
Sure.
And so we would have people lose 7% body fat. We'd have them lose 30 pounds, 40 pounds. We'd have, like, in 42 days, see amazing results. And then the story behind that was like, this is hard. Why would I want to do this? I'm not going to do this. And so we had to literally borrow money one month to pay back our clients because they were getting so much.
Well, that's intel. Something's working.
We're like, we should be worse at this. But again, it wasn't like we weren't really helping them.
No,
so,
but it was that realization that we're not actually making a dent into them because their identity didn't change. The story around that was, well, I'm doing this because, yet again, I'm seeking an external result to seek an internal feeling. They were getting external results, right? Like they were doing things that they never thought were accomplishing. But it was that same thing of like, well, this is all I get at the end of this, right? Like, I mean, we did the whole before-after picture. We'd have literally our clients look at it like, look at yourself. Like, can you believe this? I don't see any change.
No way.
Yeah, like literally look before and after.
Well, that's kind of like almost disorder mode.
Totally. Yeah, but I think most people, when we start to talk about this and you go, it's not your fault because you don't know what you don't know. You've been told that this thing is going to make you happy, weight loss, fitness, whatever. Like when we start to say, it's not that, and we're like, it's not your fault because you've never been told, and we're going to show you a different way, and it gets to be fun, and it gets to be easy, and it gets to be light. Like they're sort of like, I don't think I believe you, but it sounds really intriguing. And so then it's the slow, and we do gut health and nourishment stuff because that is a part of it. But, you know, we say sometimes that's like what gets people in the door.
I was going to say, plant the seeds too, and just get them to ask
and then we're
questions.
Like, here's the thing. Here, like, we like fire hose them with information. It just, like, if one part sinks in and they go, huh, I think that might, there's something to that. And then they start to just see it. And it's a growth thing. And it's just daily shifts and it's daily. And we're always going, huh, that's weird. Wonder why I said that. Wonder why I felt that. Wonder why, you know, wonder how I can do this better, learn more, do all of that. And if we can create a culture where people want to be curious and be connected and have harder conversations and feel safe in that, like that's where it changes. And that's where like the community part has been so cool of just seeing the whole, the space of the gym has changed, the atmosphere has changed, the energy has changed.
It's been awesome just to see, because I think the one makes sense, because yet again, we have, you know, we do this intro in a 10-day segment, right? And most people are like, you want me to get what out of 10 days? Like, there's no way. But if the ones that have been open and come from a place of curiosity, right, and allow themselves to experience this in 10 days, the overwhelming sense is like, you know, in this side of the gym, people are still getting, you know, amazing fitness results and everything else. But I think the overwhelming sense is the response that we're getting is, I feel freer.
Yeah.
I feel less weight on my shoulders. I feel lighter. Yeah. I feel like I'm able to experience life on my terms, not through somebody else's lens, right? And and I have a different understanding what's going to make me happy and why I do the things. And honestly, good or bad, we've had quite a few people like, you know what? I don't have any passion in my life. Like, I'm doing something that I do not want to do every single day.
Oh, I think that's most people.
Yeah, I want to quit my job.
Like, literally, we've had quite a few people like, I'm going to go quit my job. Because, like, this, I'm not lit up by what I do, right? Like, there's, like, 87% of people don't like what they do every single day, right? And it's like, well, is it that what you, because yet again, you got involved with that for a reason, right? Is it trying to find something that does pull you to aspire to more, right? Like, it doesn't mean you have to be the CEO of the company or whatever, but how can you contribute to that more, right? Like, how can you do something that pulls you out of bed instead of feeling like you're having to constantly push yourself to drag yourself out of bed, right? Like, and I think that's probably the most rewarding sense for us is it's just allowing people to see life through a different lens and understand that they can control their experience, right?
Well, and it's seeing that. I mean, I think that was a big thing for us of like fear pushes you until the vision pulls you.
Yeah.
And that's the intention piece. When we start to get people to say, well, what's your intention? Like, why are you doing this, or why are you not doing this, or what do you like? What? Because everything can be good and bad, right? Like, everything can be good and bad, but what's the intention? So if the intention is from love and growth and connection, that's awesome. If it feels expansive, we're like, do more of it. If it feels contractive, do less of it, right? Yeah. And understand that it gets to be easy. We don't have to be in the struggle. And I mean, people are like, really? Because that's what we've been taught. Like, we, you know.
Well, you almost think if it's not, like, if it doesn't taste terrible, it must not be giving me enough energy. Or if I'm not completely smoked wiped out for workout, it must not have worked. So it's like,
well, because it's like, is it really that simple? Right? Like, because when you get down the bare bones, like you're looking at CrossFit, like the methodology is pretty simple. It's pretty simplistic, right?
The one thing I would have done different, though, truthfully, recovery. I would have done so much less. It's not even funny.
And I'm the same thing of like, I don't know if it's the older athlete in me now of like, you know,
my body feels like shit.
Instead of feeling like I should do 8 workouts a day, like take care of yourself better, right? And at the same time, I probably wouldn't have had the same experience, even though now I have a different platform that I can speak from because I went through that experience. I probably wouldn't have gone that route if I would have just allowed myself to downshift and ask myself different questions of why am I doing this, right? Like, what is my relationship with these things, right? Because, you know, and it kind of got us on that platform with when it comes to an athlete of, yet again, we see some, whether it's a job interview, whether it's whatever, you're coming up to your day of that endeavor. You've done all your work, you've done everything, and all of a sudden you get up to that line, you're getting ready to take the test, you're getting ready to walk in, you're getting ready to do your first lift, or whatever it may be. All of a sudden you feel those sensations come through, and all of a sudden the verbiage comes to your mind of like, you know what, maybe I don't get this, maybe I didn't train hard enough, maybe my competitor did more than I did. It's like, first off, those are things completely out of your control because you're in this moment in time. But at the same time, those same sensations physiologically are the same as excitement, same as anticipation, same those things. But if you become aware about it and pay a different understanding and honor them instead of neglecting them, it doesn't matter about the affirmations, right? Because we've all been athletes on some shape or form. It's like, you get like, oh, this workout's going to be good for you, right? And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, because that was my thing of like, I never wanted to know where I was at placement-wise, I never wanted to know, because all of a sudden the expectation became this, right? And it's like, well, really, that didn't matter because you had 5 more workouts to go. All that really mattered was the next thing that you could, that was...
Especially CrossFit.
Absolutely, right? Like, things can change in a whim, right? But it was, but my stance on there was always, I don't want to know, because now all of a sudden the expectation comes in. Where with our clients, it's like, let's quit the expectation. Quit the comparisons, right? Like, let's focus on the littlest thing that allows you to feel progress, right? Like, let's make the smallest micro commitment for yourself that unless you literally choose not to do, you'll fall through with the thing you write. Like, for a lot of our clients, it's like, let's not start on a regimen of getting to the gym 5 days a week, not even 3 days a week. I want you to tie your shoes. I want you to get on your exercise clothes. And if that means you're going to go for a walk, go for a walk. If that means you're going to get in your car and come to the gym, come to the gym, right? But let's start right there, because for most people, we built such walls up from ourselves that we inherently don't trust ourselves, right? Totally. And so it's a lot of it is getting us to understand that, yet again, we hold all the answers within us. It's just allowing us to break down those walls and reestablish that relationship with ourselves, that I can trust myself, right? Like, I can trust of, oh shit, am I getting tired right now? Or am I just, you know what? I can still talk. I can still do these things. I can still have these things on an athletic standpoint. I can trust where I'm at, because not only have I put in the work physically, I put in the work internally to have these type of conversations with myself, so I have a different understanding.
Totally. And again, I think those conversations are so new, but I think it's, like you just said, planting those little seeds. And I do want to know if you get more people coming in. I know Shift is new, but coming in for Shift or coming in as members first. But I could totally see how, regardless of you selling them, if it's members first, I could see if you then sell them, or they kind of are curious about Shift. I think you guys are like your best brand ambassadors, because even if they don't believe it, they see you. It's just like fitness. Like, well, I want to look like him, I want to look like her. But they can see, you know, maybe your flow with your kids, or your flow with your relationship, or the flow as a business owner. Like, you guys living it, I think is absolutely, it has to be your best, like, branding and marketing.
That's probably the best compliment I got when I went through my program, because like I always seemed happy, but I had this mask of like, put on the happy, right? And then like I stopped counting macros, and I stopped weighing myself, and I like got truly happy. And I had people know, like, there's something different. There's just something different. And I'm like, that's compliment, because it was the energy. And I'm like, I'm just happy. Like, I've actually let go of all this stuff, and I'm not being weighed down. And we had a guy that came in, he came for my niece's graduation, and he used to be a member, and he's like, have you lost weight? Did you grow out your hair? Like, what's
it's always physical.
What's going on? And I was like, no, it's my energy. I was like, I'm actually just like happy. And he's like, and literally it was a 20-minute conversation. He's like, that can't be it. I'm like, no, it is. I'm like,
okay, sign me up for sure. Yeah.
I was like, no, it's the energy change. And that's when we start to, like, we ask people, okay, well, at the end of this, in a week, in 2 weeks, how do you want to feel? And they're like, I don't know.
Although I will say though that we've had quite a few members actually that we didn't. I mean, we started working a little bit nutritionally on them, like getting them to stop eating processed foods and stuff like that. Went for a walk once or twice a week because they were doing a very sedentary life. Started working on the emotional pieces of everything, and lost weight.
Oh, well,
like,
you know you carry
in a matter of like a week.
Absolutely, literally.
Like they were married to their scale, woke up every single day, same thing of like their self-worth was based off what the number was telling them, this arbitrary thing that of course we get attached to. And literally by throwing that away, relinquishing the anchors that thing was holding on them, but really getting them to acknowledge like, wow, I didn't realize I was having these feelings, this sensation. Yeah, like, because the Court thing is that she always says, you know, what is it?
that physical weight is a representation of emotional weight.
Yeah, well, you're protecting yourself.
Yeah,
or
and when
whatever.
you let go of that, it just like your body's like, oh, thank you. Like I can breathe, I can show up. And I think that's been the other thing with Shift is it's such a bigger mission, and that's why. So like there's the gym, and there's a lot of people in the gym doing it, but like the mission is really for Shift to grow bigger, right? And so most of this coaching is all online because you don't have to be right here, right? You don't have to be in our area to need this, and that's where we see the really cool growth part of like we do Shift as like a membership site, and you can be anywhere, and you get to do it in community where you go, I thought I was the only one that had that crazy thought, and you're like, you had a similar thought, and you, all right, so this is cool. We can do this together, right? Like it's just like with CrossFit. Why do we do it in community? Because when you're alone, you're like, well, I must be the only one that can't deadlift, right?
Or meet someone.
Yeah. And then you, like when you get to be in that community and you start to hear other people and you hear their breakthroughs, and they teach each other, and that's the coolest part. Like they start teaching each other, and it's the ripple effect. And that was my very first like vision in meditation was like a ripple, and I literally was like third eye, just like the ripple, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the thing. Yeah. And it's like that's what we want to create. And we start to see it. You see people that are growing and changing, and they're just. And we had one of our members, she goes, I was at my church group, and this lady said something, she goes, and I reached over and touched her, and I told her some things, and she goes, what am I doing? I don't do that, right?
Well, because I mean,
like,
that was just, like the same member, like, we discovered, because she was a member of, I mean, she was a client of mine for years, and, you know, we went through strictly paleo, we measured everything, we worked out, we did all these things, and, like, she wouldn't see any sort of physical change, and, like, she would, like, yet again, that was what we were basing everything off of. And like, it was like, I know there's something in there you're not doing, right? Like, of course, he was casting the judgment kind of thing on there. And we come to find out, like, yes, she was doing other things that we shouldn't do, but it was really because she had other experiences in her past that she chose to push away, like close the door on those things are never going to away. But the only way for her to experience actually feeling was to gorge herself and binge. Like she would literally eat to the standpoint of feeling sick, because that was her only way of feeling connection with herself, to feel emotionally like she could have feelings. And so it was coming from the sense of, yeah, you can have all the goals in the world, but at the same time, like to meet your need in that moment in time, like you're doing those things. And yet again, if you're not honoring the things that you chose to neglect, they're going to come back at some point. They're going to come back to the surface where they need to come back. And
she's been the coolest success story because, you know, she had some physical change and done all the things, and then like kind of had a bad year, or physically she didn't get to do that much, and she physically looks better and she feels better, and she's like, I would have never, and she was like, she did not want to go back to her past, and it was like, okay, I did a 4-month program, and she did it, and she's like, I can't even believe like that this was the thing the whole time, right? Because she had no idea, and it's just, and it's so hard to get people to see her like
it's possible.
She's happy. Yeah, exactly. It's the possibility, and you're like, if you can just believe me for a second, that if you have some faith and you do the things, it will happen for you, right? Like but you have to kind of show up. And
the question we always ask is, okay, say right now you could snap your finger, you find the magic genie lamp, whatever, it comes out. You can grant your wish of accomplishing your goal. So you accomplish your goal, but you still have the same underlying feelings about yourself that you have right now. Yeah. Does that feel like success for you? And most of them are like, that's when it really usually sinks in of like, no. Like I can have a couple, if I still look at myself, if I still can't look myself in the mirror, that's not sick. If I can't like be proud of myself, I can't like, if this isn't something my kids would want to aspire towards, no, right? And so it's learning to like,
and to see that, you know, 6 months before, 10 years before, you know, getting to the championship and then walking away with the trophy and be like, why can't we practice? It's like, oh wait, I gotta take time off. Well, I want to do that. It's, I mean, it's pretty. Hopefully, should society like right now? I mean, the reason I mentioned like gym to Shift like that because I can kind of see that's the entrance point. But hopefully, like culturally, society. You talked about gurus, which is also a business, we know, and I'm here for all of it. Like, I love all of that. You know they're making money, and that's why I'm super excited that you guys are taking this on. So it's localized, and obviously at some point it becomes, you know, global. But you know, we've got something where you can see, feel, touch humans that are like interacting with you, because the gurus are great, but they're still, you know, miles away, and like, and it's overarching, and then they package it for the masses, and I don't know, there's some things I think that are lost. I think all of it's phenomenal, but you take out your pieces. But if you have a local option, you can come and like have real conversation. I think that's always the most effective.
For us, you can get the pieces, right? Like we got like, well, I've read that, I've read this, I've read this. And it's like, well, education, knowledge is good, but it's potential power. It's not, knowledge isn't power, right? It's potential. If you embody it, if you learn to embody it and actually utilize it, and for her, like, same thing, like, we've gone through our own self-development and everything else, but until I think I got to see her experience and actually be able to understand that I don't feel, I'm not living these things, right? Like, I've read this, but it's that go mentality, right? Instead of like, well, no, I need to actually slow down and see where these things actually fill into my life. Where it, like, this is the end again. Am I just doing this because so and so said so, or do I really believe this story that essentially I want to do, right? And
I think it's structured growth, right? Structured development, and that's what was so different for me. Like, the program was 10 months, and it was like, this is the thing and it started with you, and it was like, this is the thing you're doing this week, and that's it. And that for me was amazing, because I would have been the one that like watched all the modules and like.
I was so not that student. I would have cheated off your test.
We were totally opposite, but I would have been like,
I got practice. Give me the answers.
But I was the one that always wanted to know it. But I would have skipped the embodiment, and I would have actually skipped the growth. Right?
But you guys really are yin and yang. This is perfect. That's
so,
hilarious.
Like, and so it was like, it was cool because it made me just be in it.
Yeah.
But like, and that's what we've seen with our people, is it's like, I give you all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't have a little bit of structure, and you don't have the community, and you don't have a path and like a strategy to actually try to get there, it gets overwhelming. And you know, and that's why like we start every with this 10-day, and then we're like, just come into the group, right? Come into the monthly thing, and eventually this will probably turn into a program and all of that, but like a bigger thing. But it's like, come in and be in the group and be just present in your development, and make it a priority. Make it as much of a priority as eating your vegetables and showing up to the gym. Like, get up and meditate, do the things, journal, like, figure out what works for you. And that's where we see the growth, that people really go, okay, I'm going to take a year, and I'm really going to say, I'm going to commit to me. And that's where all of it changes, versus this, like, a friend of mine, we were talking today, it was like, growth used to be this haphazard thing. Somebody says, grab this book, then grab that book, then, but there's no like congruency. And that's one of our big things, is that the message and your life, it's all congruent, and you have to be looking at all of it all the time, because like we said earlier, one part falls off. So if you're like, okay, well, I'm being congruent in my growth and my thoughts and what I'm doing, like, that's when it all really, all of a sudden people are like, this is like way easier, and I feel way better, and I can't believe this is where I am in 2 months.
Well, and it's also the coaching side of things. Like, that's the part that I think that's, because obviously the community, people feed off each other.
You need the support. You always need support.
Because it's the same thing, like, if you're a CrossFitter and you're doing your own program or anything else, you're going to be biased towards the things that you like to do. Right?
Of course.
Like, that's just nature of all of us.
Deadlifting
right? Like,
every day.
You tend to do the things that you like to do that, right? And it's the same thing with this stuff. If I know for most, and that's really what I think is the breakthrough for most people, is getting asked the question that first off, you're probably unaware of, right? Like, is having somebody from the outside ask you a question that you probably have never thought about before. Because inherently, we ask ourselves, and habitually, we ask the same questions to ourselves over and over and over, right? Because inside the program, you actually also do like Zoom, Facebook, or Zoom
so you do actually do the
Facebook. So we actually do live coaching. So not only are you getting live coaching, but also, if I hear her story, where I may not have been like, oh, that actually sounds like mine, right? Like,
we'll create safe space to share.
Absolutely. And that's where you really get the sense of being able to break through a lot of the walls that you weren't even aware were even up, because those were protectors coming up for you. But then all of a sudden you see somebody else, or you see something where, again, there's real like, if I'm asking you a question, I'm actually asking her a question at the same time, right? And like, so even though like I know, like, if I'm asking you, I'm more directing it towards her. But if I know if I ask her a question, she's going to avoid it or whatever. But if she sees you answer it, that allows her to also have some safe space to do it, right? So it's being able to not only have the structure of the program, but really it's the nuts and bolts comes down to the actual coaching portion of it. It's having somebody else lay it out for you, right? Like, I don't care if it's on athletic realm, I don't care if it's on the development realm. We all need coaches in some platform, right? Like, if you aspire to be a professional business person, you also need some sort of group that you surround yourself with, right? Like, whether it's the closest people you're around, or you have somebody you're modeling after, or it's a coach in that endeavor. Like, those things do pay dividends for what they're supposed to do.
And that's honestly why I'm so passionate about, like, you see my influencer shirts, and it is poking the bear. And I created the podcast for influencers in, like I said, real life, to just talk about it. They're not necessarily seeking, you know, all this platform, millions of followers, but I'm like, no, you're one that should be doing that. Because a lot of those coaches are influencers, and the more I was working with them, I was like, okay, we need to disrupt this noise. And it wasn't about calling out the bad, it was about highlighting the good. I mean, like, okay, young humans, I know you're fine now, this is your coach and this is what's happening, but we got to start bringing some light to some experienced humans that have lived it, that have, you know, the education and credentials or whatever that support that, but really have lived it and come from an authentic space and come from, you know, passion and heart and not a monetary gain. Or they look a certain way and they actually have an eating disorder, or they're obsessed with fitness, like, because I mean, it's rampant.
Crazy.
But on the bright side, I do think, you know, our kiddos are getting into gurus, or getting into mindfulness, getting into meditation, exposed to some of this stuff earlier. So I could really see at some point, again, like, you know, fitness, gym, wellness is like you're getting that human, but then at some point maybe it's like Surge is fitness own animal, and then obviously Shift, you have a whole different human coming in, and then I have no doubt it kind of all circles together, because you need all those points.
And that's what's been cool, is just for it to be all of the things, and just to see it grow and see people grow, and
well, it's what you guys have come for. It's everything you've worked to be right now, consciously or unconsciously. Like, universe or whatever is giving you platform to like fully use your skill set and fully service the community and like create that ripple effect for the greater good. And then, you know, money and everything else will come. You have to keep faith in it, which is hard at points. I mean, it's real hard. But you know that it matters. And if at the end of the day you are broke or whatever, you can look back and you're like, I did all this cool shit. It mattered what I said to people. People cared that I was in their life. And all these things that aren't necessarily like our success points that we grew up with. But then as you get older and you question it, right, and you're like, oh my God, the richness of life, the things and the opportunity and everything that's out there, and the humans that are kind of like in the struggle, in the reward with you, it's pretty awesome. Like,
it's coming from a place of contribution, right? It's coming from a place of contribution, understanding that, yet again, you can look at the state of our healthcare, you can look at our mental health, you can look at all these different platforms of where we're at, you know, yet again, we have so many tools that are availability to connect with each other, but at the same time, we're probably more disconnected than we've ever been with each other, right? But it's coming from the sense of, if we can learn to contribute, that checks off all our needs, right? Like, if you need significance, you need, you know, certainty, you need variety, you need answer, like, you need love and connection. Like, if we can contribute, and whether it be, you know, volunteering, or whether it be in a parent role, whatever it may be, like, you can contribute, that checks off all your needs, and you won't have to be searching outside yourself to judge or do other things that we all do, right? Like, so if we can come from a different standpoint, a different understanding, different connection, and come from a place of understanding, like, if I contribute and I come from a place of service and love, this world's going to be a pretty awesome place. Like, I mean,
happier place.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
we're just like peaceful, man. Like, really peaceful.
Yeah, and like happy and helping, and that's been our thing, right? It's like, when it's actually from service, it doesn't feel like work. And that's why, as entrepreneurs, we all work 8 hours a week, because you're like, but I need to figure out, how do I get better at asking questions? How do I help that person? How do I spread this? How do I get into this world where we can help more people? And that's the fun part of it. It never feels like work. Like, it's a lot of hours.
You still got to keep balance, though. Because I mean, I believe what I do, I love what I do, but then I told back and it's like, you need to be still, which is the hardest thing in the world for me, and I'm sure you guys identify. But to really keep that time to pet the dogs, take a walk, go do a salt bath, whatever. And it's still, I still think that process is ever evolving and ever changing. And I'm sure you'll even see this business-wise with Shift, where, like, you know, 5 years from now, it's a completely different animal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
which it should be.
I mean, just in the last 6 months, we've added different things to it, and taken things away. Like, it's an ever-growing process, right? But I think for us going through there is understanding that you can strip things away. If you get married to the one methodology on that, yet again, you're pigeonholing yourself on there. It's being open to understand that, yet again, maybe my philosophy isn't the only philosophy that's right? It's being open to adapting other things. It's being open. It's flowing. It's being water that can flow and change shapes and do all those kind of things. It doesn't have to be so rigid and constrained and everything else, right? It's the same thing like with the dogs or your family, right? Like, we all have our needs. We all need certain things in our life. At moment to moment, it's understanding a purpose too, right? Like, from maybe in this moment, my job is to help you smile. Maybe it's to open the door for a stranger. Maybe
be present.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And that has changed for us a ton. I mean,
that's really hard,
He used to be such a workaholic. I mean, it would be like, I'd be like, well, let's do this with the girls on Sunday. And all of a sudden he was like, I gotta go build jerk boxes. And I'm like, You just took a 2-hour nap on Thursday. You could have done, you know, but it was this subconscious like guilt, right?
Yeah.
And now we're like, cool, it's the weekend. We're leaving the gym. We're going to the mountains. We're gonna, because that's the thing when like peace comes from presence.
Yeah.
And being okay and being with yourself and being quiet and going there, and it's been fun to see.
Well, and knowing, like, going through all this experience, like, you have the proof that universe or whatever, again, there's larger order. So, like, you don't, if this kind of is what provides me peace of mind in those zones where I'm like, I got a million things to do and YouTube and this, and I got to learn how to be a 13-year-old whiz on Audacity or whatever. But I'm like, you know what? F it. Universe, I'm right on time. It's something bigger is going to take care of me. I know just because I work harder, I do more workouts or, you know, whatever with my food. Like, I'm learning some lesson right now, so 5 years from now, I'm like, I didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
You can chill. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, my mentor always says, like, I get really clear on what I want, and then she's like, I'm very much like, I want this or something better. Because very often you don't know what that something better is. Yeah. So if you're showing up from the right energy and you're being, then it will always work out. Right?
Well, and you got to be careful what you do wish for, because you think you know what you want, and then it comes to you like, oh, okay.
God will give you two gifts, right? It will give you what you want, and will also throw you an obstacle in there as well, right? And so, I mean, like, every time that we've always had our big breakthroughs is when we've gone through something really, really, really difficult, right? Whether it was the gym was like, we're gonna be able to stay over, like whether like every single sense that we've always had, there on the other side of that came the light, right? Yeah. And understand, but that was growth. But that allowed us to be yet again be open and understand that was actually growth. That was just friction. Yeah. That wasn't a breaking point. That was just friction in that. And I think it's when you when you put things out to the universe or God, whatever you believe in, you're going to be rewarded with it, but you're also going to be rewarded on the sense of whether it be an obstacle or it may not come in the same shape or form, right? Like,
well, it's got to get you conscious.
Absolutely.
And whatever, and again, if you don't listen or you work harder, you're going to drink more or do whatever it is you do, it will hit you. You got to be paying attention. Yeah. So if you want to streamline the process, just listen to your gut. See affirmations that are happening. Like, be present. You don't have to go through running through the wall as much. I absolutely still do, but you know, we're still growing.
We're all still learning. That was a dumb wall. But
All right, so we covered shift, and I love all. I mean, we could go on for like hours because I love the human development, and I cherish these conversations so much, and it makes me so happy that not only is there opportunity to be a part of Surge, be a part of Shift, but mostly that you guys are parents and that you have two young humans that are going to be learning this stuff at such a young age and learn how to live it and this be their truth so early on. I mean, I get the chills thinking, because it's this. I mean, that's the point of change for our society and what it's really about, and it's so awesome. So heavy compliment there. But I also want to make sure I wanted to I wanted to cover all your guys' businesses, challenges. I wanted to talk a little bit quickly about how you're kind of leading specifically into like female market.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
So ramen?
Is it ramen?
Ramen. So
I can't remember.
No, so essentially,
what product do you have? This on my research.
So ramen is essentially a fitness and strength insert that we developed that actually be placed inside of a training shoe. You know, because it was made specifically for the CrossFit functional fitness athlete that, you know, in the endeavors that we partake on, you can, you know, obviously you run, you jump, you climb, you do all those things. But if you're the athlete that's also may struggle with dorsiflexion, you have limited ankle mobility, you have those kind of things, you're an older athlete, whatever, you have surgery, like whatever it may be, you require, or you don't require, but you tend to lean towards like weightlifting shoes or something like this. I mean, you've been around the game long enough. Like how many people?
I've seen. I mean, tons of companies and something like zero shoes and like super flat, or then you have something. So it's. But I love that you had like, because most of these things from entrepreneurs comes from something you've experienced, or like a need that wasn't in the marketplace.
And so I mean, we saw people that come into our door all the time. Like, well, they go for a run, change their shoes, and then go lift, and then they change.
Well, that's what CrossFitters do.
Yes, and so like, but at the same time, like I say, it's like. I struggled with ankle mobility, ankle flexibility for years, right? And so when CrossFit got into like would progress on, then all of a sudden you saw, you know, single leg squats, pistols, those kinds coming out, not just like do 10 of those, like we're gonna do 100 of those. Yeah. And then on top of that, now you're gonna do box jumps, now you're gonna go run, now you're gonna do those things, and then I want you to do some overhead squats. So we're doing. So we decided, okay, how can we? Because I mean, there's been other things that have come out there, like. Wedges inserts have been around. Like we tested out a couple other companies prior to that, but we didn't find anything that after doing a workout, like it would be sandwiched. It wouldn't allow yourself. It wouldn't mimic necessarily a weightlifting shoe. Gotcha. So because weightlifting shoe, like it has a heel in or a raised heel, but it's also a stable platform to increase your stability and balance at the ground up. And so what we did is we took basically a year and a half, like testing all kinds of, like, we had foam out our ears at our house.
Okay.
I like actually had a test.
I'm surprised I didn't know about that. And literally I was just looking, because again, I really do try to do as minimal research as possible, not from a lazy standpoint. I just want it to be as raw as a combo as, because I hate the interview of like, well, I've got 50 questions and we're going to get through them. But I think that's good that it came from, you know, a need, and you're like, here, we're going to figure this out.
And so then we also saw, you know, a lot of our athletes, you know, that would love doing CrossFit, right? But because of their history, because of the limited mobility and stuff like that, and it was constantly like, look, we're not there yet. Like, we're going to continue scaling back. We're going to do, like, we're going to do the progressions and all those things.
That's still CrossFit.
And that's still CrossFit.
Yeah.
But what we run into is, in the group atmosphere, it got really, really hard, because yet again, as the type of personality that walks through the door of that, I'm like, no, I can do that. I want to do that. I see so-and-so. It's like, well, that person's been doing it for 5 years. You've been here for 6 months. Well,
and you just got surgery.
Yes.
So
it's not a good idea, right? And so it was like, okay, how can we mend those fences where they can still do something similar to that, and still feel the aspect of progress, because really that's what we're talking about, is progress, without feeling the aspect of that they're going to get injured, they're going to get hurt, and everything else. So we found a way that, instead of telling, like, okay, if you want to do this, what will really help you is a weightlifting shoe, but it's $250, right? Like, well, I'm a mom that does this every now and then. I'm not going to commit to doing it. Okay, well, what can we do instead? Okay, we can develop these things that allows you to increase your dorsiflexion instead of having to worry about standing on plates or standing on other apparatuses we've used over the years, and worrying about, you know, front squatting or goblet squatting, or especially overhead squatting and those kind of things. We can put these in your shoes, give you the similar feel benefit that an actual weightlifting shoe does, increase your stability, your balance, along with helping you with your dorsiflexion and everything else, but at the same time not cause you to compensate, because that's the other part that people are like, well, I have proper mobility. I'm like, well, if you're doing that, something else is probably compensating because of that. And if you're compensating that over and over and over, especially with CrossFit workouts that are, depending on where it can be, are highly repetitive and a lot of contractions, right? Sure. Well, if you're doing that and you're having compensation, you're probably also going to have a weak link in the chain sooner or later rear up and cause a problem. And so if we can do that to combat that and work on that at the same time, with allowing you to feel happy, allowing yourself to feel like you're seeing progress, allowing yourself to feel like you're in part of the group environment without having to feel like you're segregated or whatever people tend to make up in their own mind. Can we do this and give you a tool? Yet again, this is a tool, not the end-all be-all. Like, we still need to do mobility, we still need to do these things, but give you a resource and a tool that you can use to experience these other elements of what fitness can be. Right, and at the same time not have to, and take out, because it drove me nuts as a coach, of like, stop changing your shoes, like, let's work on these things.
We're watching YouTube videos where you watch athletes rolling with a bag full of shoes, but I also think that's CrossFit culture.
Absolutely.
And then we got socks and accessories. I remember coming in and I was a little CrossFitter, we had a lot of crap. Getting to CrossFit, I was like, what the, you don't need this rub and this lotion and this tape, and I'm like, get your shoes on, they're not gonna make you any better, I promise you. It matters, but like, you're not gonna run faster in that shoe or lift better, like, it might be more comfortable and repetition's fine, but like, get your mind around some things.
Well, and that was the cool thing with Rawmade, is it's like, you know, it's simple, they can put it in, they can leave it in, it's $30, right? It's like, let's take away all of these things that people like, we're fighting, and just make it simple. And I mean, you know,
well, I think, and also on the flip side, then you can be a one-stop shop.
Exactly.
Okay, we're getting in mental and intuition or unpacking. Let's go shift. You just want to work out this. I mean, it all fits together, obviously. But
well, because it makes it all streamlines it. It all makes it all coincides together. Yet again, how can we make your experience the best it can be possible? Right? Because yet again, do we need to work on these things? Yes. But if I tell you, if I tell you that you working on your mobility and we are going to pass the wall test for the next maybe 6 months, okay, sweet, thanks, so I'm going to go down the street, right? I'm going to find something else, so I'm going to do this to myself, and that's going to lead to other problems, right? So if we can kind of find a way to work around that, where you can still experience all the things that you want to experience on your element that you are walking in the door for, and slowly chip away to getting you to not have to rely on those things. But at the same time, there's a reason why every Olympian, well, now it's not. Now you're getting more guys using, nanos and stuff like that. It's getting a little bit more
marketing and branding.
But most, for the vast majority, use weightlifting shoes. And they're some of the most mobile athletes around, right? There's a reason because of that. It's not just hoopla. Like they work for a reason, right? And so how can
they're also on another level? But I completely agree with you.
But how can we do that for my mom walking in the door, right? Like who's worn nothing but high heels her whole life, who can't barely get her knee past her toe, let alone like, okay, now I want you to do a goblet squat, maybe potentially a wall ball, those kind of things on there. But you see those overuse things kind of happen. Okay, how can we do that to combat that and allow you to have fun?
Solutions, I love it. And again, like the one-stop shop. Female initiative, did you have projects specifically around women?
So I mean, I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs. I think the biggest thing is, so me and nine other women, we're doing a mom's event in San Diego.
Tell us about all the things. Oh, okay. Is it like a retreat kind of?
Yeah, so it's like 250 women.
Oh shit, okay.
10 of us that all speak, and so it's kind of a weekend for what we've seen as moms, unfortunately, is that most of us don't fill up our own cup.
Yeah.
And we pour and we pour and we like forget that we have to take care of us. And so we're all coaches in some aspect, and so there's a lot of like breath work and sound healing, and I'll talk about shift.
Again, teach our future generation, I hear, but also taking care of the leader, the coach, the head first.
Yeah, and knowing that like, so the cool thing we're gonna do is ask everybody how many kids they have, because like the goal of like helping these 250 moms is helping the 500 kids.
Yeah.
Or, you know, because that's the change. Like when we heal ourselves, that's when we get to stop the patterns and the, you know, like that's where everything gets to change. And so yeah, so it's San Diego, May 15th through the 17th.
Okay.
It's a 3-day event, you know, just for moms to come be seen and heard and feel and have real conversations. And
how'd you find this crew of would you say 9?
Yeah,
9 women? And they're local?
Nope, everybody's everywhere. So from Hunger for Happiness. So yeah, so Hunger for Happiness was the program I did, and then Pause Breathwork, which is all run by Samantha Skelly. So we all were in one of those programs together.
Okay.
And ironically, one of our old members from, oh my gosh, 8-9 years ago, that we were still connected. She came back, and she lives in Hawaii now. She came back into town, ended up doing Hunger for Happiness. Now she's one of the moms doing it. So when you talk about the people that you meet on your mission,
yes.
Like, so yeah, so we have one from Australia, we have Canada, so it's just.
And so you guys got together, you put together this retreat, and 250 women are coming to see you guys.
Yeah.
Dude, that's huge.
Yeah, not sold out yet, so we'll drop the link. But
well, no, when I post this, I'll post all that information and
so,
everything, obviously, about the businesses. But that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be just being mom, just to be mom and mom as a business owner, or just whatever, just pouring into yourself. It's more that just loving yourself.
Yeah.
And realizing the effect it has.
The entrepreneur, I could not agree more. In the entrepreneurial situation in the mom market, and my mom owns a swim school. Shout out to Colorado OG in Littleton. And it's so, and my brother that's got out of the Marines was a water safety expert, and it's been so funny again how his journey is now translated into, you know, high-end, you know, Marine situation and special situations to like coaching little kiddos. And like how much and he absolutely loves it. They're just thriving. But how much you see dads coming more than moms, like that's starting to shift. But I think it's a mom right now conversation, but as parents are, you know, getting together, I love that there's like this stigma fading of like, you must be the perfect parent, you must keep up with the Joneses, versus saying like, I don't know. I assure you my parents didn't have a rule book. So like letting that, like providing that space, just be like, what are we doing here? Yeah. What's helpful? Yeah, and just saying like, it's okay to not have the answers. I mean, we did, so in my program we did inner child, and I literally was like, can we stop time, because I guarantee I'm screwing up my kids and I need to figure out, and like we all are going to, right? Like I literally said, okay, I have to make peace with this and just know that I can give them the tools to like fix what I screw up, right? And that's the thing of like, every kid is different and every parent is different, and like if you come from a place of love for yourself, you will be a better parent. You will be a better everything. And so how do we do that? And so I'm excited. It's gonna be fun. And of course I'm gonna run a CrossFit workout before, and or something. Like I'm like, we gotta move. Like let's do all the things. So well, the entrepreneurial, I kind of segued out of that, but the entrepreneurial situation around parents. I think some people think it's a little bit weird, but I champion that so much, because you come up with like better baby food or better cleaner diapers or sustainable something. I mean, there's so many really the ingenuity around it is coming, I think, because of this conversation. And these things are, again, we're starting young, we're implementing strategy and thought, everything with our kiddos. I mean, I couldn't imagine if some of this stuff I was exposed to. All in due time, we know, but it's a big deal. Any other projects, and like I said, I'll post all of this, but any other projects, initiatives, good words of encouragement, anything else you guys want to put out there?
Not that specifically that we have going on. I mean, obviously we cover a lot. Like
we like to talk.
Stand in the back. But I think more than anything, is hopefully by listening to this, hopefully it just allows you to come from a place of curiosity. It's just learning to come from a place of curiosity and allow yourself to put down your armor and understand that it's okay to honor yourself and to want to growth is part of all of us, right?
It is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, you grow or die, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you see that all the time, but it's true, right? Like, in nature, relationships, whatever. But I think, you know, the reason why I think for both of us that I will beyond say every single day, I'm beyond blessed to have her right next to me, leading the way and everything else on this, is we've been able to put down, me mainly, a lot of my own ego and stuff like that, and understand that we're going through this because, and I've been able to grow just as much as her, and that's allowed us to bring our relationship together on a different standpoint, right? And I think if we can do that in our own relationships, whether it be with our kids, whether our coworkers, on a romantic level, whatever it may be, if we can come from a different understanding of like, okay, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And come from a place of compassion and come from a place of love and not judgment always on ourselves, that will, I truly think that can transcend the world that we live in and absolutely allow us to open up so many more doors of not just on an athletic realm. Like, have I seen this play out big time on athletes? Absolutely. Like, we're working on a platform specifically for athletes, but more importantly, like, if you become a better human being, like, in order for things to change, you have to change. In order for things to get better, you have to get better, right? And if you can live and embody that, life become, like, don't get me wrong, like, we're nowhere near what we want to be, and we're not content, we're not doing those kind of things.
Hopefully you never are, honestly.
But at the same time, like, because that was our thing forever. Like, well, we're not there yet, right? Like, we don't have $10 million in the bank. We don't have a 10,000 square foot facility with 500 members and everything else pouring out, right? Like, we always felt like we needed that validation.
Oh, careful, that's a lot though. I'm with you, but
But before we started putting out there, right? And it's like, well, really, like, do we still want to aspire to those things? Absolutely. I want to aspire past those things. But at the same time, if I can come from a place of understanding for myself right now, and coming from a place of appreciation, and coming from a place of gratitude, like, everything starts with gratitude. But in starting from that point, your life will transcend, and it won't be so restricted. It won't be so handcuffed. Like, you will open doors and open windows that you never even knew were there, and allow yourself to walk through them at the same time.
Yeah. Just like, I mean, everything you say, look at the world differently, see it differently, ask different questions, and find the people that will help ask those questions to you.
Completely. And I think that is like the big step one of like just taking a moment to pull back. And I know we went through a lot, and I think we've all kind of been deep in it, whether it's like, you know, the self-evolution, self-work, and all this stuff. And it's so, I mean, I think there's stigma around therapy and all this, but it's such a blessing to have the opportunity, the time, energy, budget to address those things. So I wish people would embrace those opportunities to self-help, because it's so, I mean, it's the best thing you could ever do for yourself.
Absolutely.
And even if you can't, you know, digest it as like, this is for me, you do it for you, for other people, and knowing that that puts you in a place to be a better self for everyone else. But I think this conversation too is just like you said, opening up the door, planting the seeds, just start little questions. And that's what I hope for this cast. We kind of cover the most random stuff on all athletes. I'm not an expert in any of the above. We've been around the block a minute, hence I'm getting botox. So we've gone through some things, but the point is to have, you know, the experts in their own fields to come on and like plant seeds. So I hope someday my huge audience that's coming, hopefully, can go and be like, oh, okay, we heard this, and now we can get out this expert in this and this expert in this, and find what it is. So I know we covered a lot. I would just want people to take it step by step. Just open up the door. If you are seeking, you know, a wellness journey, and I mean, so much of my branding and marketing has come from like fitness, CrossFit specific, and I've loved seeing over the past, you know, 10 to 18 years, again, not to date myself, of that fitness zone going from, you know, competitive athlete to now wellness as a parent, or energy and breath, to now just like wellness as a human, and seeing that whole lifestyle go from deep fitness to more lifestyle. So anyways, as I tangent on this cast, as I do, I appreciate what you guys are doing. If you guys are out there, audience, I'll obviously put all their info up. If you're seeking, you know, a better way, or you want conversation, we're blessed in Colorado to have a few really great CrossFits. Surge is definitely one of them. I encourage you actually to watch this video, because these two bleed their passion and bleed. I think Brandon's heart rate was at like 130, so he can check off his second workout of the day, which I identify strongly. I gotta get more zen, like Courtney used to be like, Brandon, my God, you gotta hear all this right now.
She always yells at me. I yell. My vocal goes up a few times. So yeah.
But I love it, because I mean, you're so passionate about it. You guys bleed it. You've done the legwork, and now you are truly here to make the world a better place and let that ripple effect happen. Particularly through your two young humans. So I champion everything you guys are doing, and I take it a really high compliment that, you know, it is a lot of attraction that we are having this conversation. You are in my house / studio, you know, giving this vibe. And I even think it's funny that, you know, we had CrossFit and we ran into each other at Reno, and I specifically remember being like, I love that Courtney's putting out her message. This is so awesome. And that was like 8 years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time
whatever.
ago. Yeah.
And then here we are again. So Universe of Speak, and I appreciate you guys coming and speaking and bleeding your energy and doing what you're doing.
No, we're honored that you had us on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always say I would love to check back in, maybe in like 6 months to a year or whatever, and just see what's going, you know, evolution with self, evolution with biz, evolution with, you know, kiddos and maybe puppies soon, and no pressure there.
No, we put in the adoption application last night.
What are we looking at?
Her name is Stella. She's like 1. She's a boxer. Mix.
So you're doing a rescue? I was going to judge you a little bit if it was a breeder, but I was going to let him marry.
No, she's a foster. So Universe.
Yes.
What a member or gal that said, hey, I want to come check out your gym. Random day, snowed. It just ended up being her and Brandon. They were talking about our dog, and she's like, so I'm fostering this dog.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, this dog was placed for us. So,
yeah. Okay. So sorry, boxer what mix?
Pit, they think.
Okay,
So
well, you don't say that. She's not in Denver. Yeah, you're
yeah,
they think Cleo is all the time. She's actually not. She's like American Bulldog Sharpei Chow.
No, she's a cute dog. She's super cute.
She is my queen. And obviously Colette, my second one. Names are all strategic. But they always think she's Pitbull, and she's not, but whatever. I love my kitties.
So we think, but yeah, she's sweet.
Oh,
and
yes. Okay.
Met the girls, and it was funny, we're talking about growth, little tangent again, but about like, it used to be like, I'd be like, so I had this idea, and then we would have the dog, right? And he'd be like, okay,
yeah,
well,
it was pretty much like, you got an idea, that means you're going to get a dog.
So like,
know your role.
Met the dog like last week, and then like met her again, and then on Saturday he said in class, he was like, well, I'm indifferent. And I was like, well, indifferent means yes. Like, what are we doing? The girls want her, I want her. And I actually let it rest. And then I said a couple things like, maybe we can do this and that, just let that go. And then yesterday he leaves, and he comes back and he goes, oh, by the way, if we do X, Y, Z, then we can have Stella. And I was like, oh, see, I let it rest.
Yes.
He came around. Like,
I'm good. Let's whiteboard. We're going to do this.
I was usually just like, so I did the application, we got the dog, and he's like, I literally just kept waiting for her.
She got to let me feel like I got my masculine side.
Yes. I mean, we learned. I'm just going to play this scene. I hope at some point, not that you don't have enough on your plate, but to do some sort of like relationship coaching or like that. Oh my God, I think sincerely, like I think that would be amazing. Even for like single people, I think it's really cool to see like, oh, we're gonna keep the faith. Like things are good out here. But I do think that's a base of, you know, taking care of self and then coming collectively as two wholes versus halves. But we'll whole other cast.
Next time.
We'll do that next time. Yes. But thank you guys. Like I said, I'll post all their information. Please check them out. Whole, you know, human approach. I don't intend to keep branding it that way, but it's just kind of
whole life, whole you.
I like whole human actually. So.
Go with it. I'll invoice you accordingly.
No, I got you. You're the professional here.
I just swooped him into it. I didn't even know.
You are good.
Yeah, we tried. But no, I appreciate you guys, and like I said, we'll definitely keep in touch, and I'll definitely try and come over and hit a workout soon. Cool. Really quick, hit me with I'll post it, but Instagram handles or anything, website. Give me quick details.
So it's Total Shift Project is the Shift Project itself. That's on Instagram.
Okay.
Facebook, you can always find all our stuff on CrossFit Surge.
Okay.
You know, we have our own b.miracle. Courtney is your
just Courtney.miracle. Our Total Shift Project. We'll give you the links.
Okay. And what did I say? Thermorod?
Oh, Rawmaids.
Yes.
Rawmaids.com. Yeah.
We'll get it in writing.
Yeah.
I'm a visual human. I've learned this about my
I'm like, they're everywhere. I'm like, there's 12 websites. Just Google our name.
That's what I can do. All right, we'll check back in. Thank you guys again, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're so welcome.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.